morning. You're listening to me, Angela Rayner, on LBC, standing in for James O'Brien. So go easy on me. This is the first time me ever presenting, and some of you may say that's good and it might be the last time. But hey ho, I've got you for a couple of hours, and let's see how we can get on. I mean, look, it's a lot's going on at the moment. It's hotting up weather-wise. I hope you're all keeping safe and drinking plenty of water. But it's also hotting up in Parliament as well. You've got Boris Johnson having a booze up at his private Checkers establishment over the weekend while we were all burning and boiling. And we've got 5 contenders to be the next Prime Minister, who will be chosen, of course, by Conservative members. And quite frankly, they're all fighting each other at the moment. They're literally doing Labour's job for us by demolishing why they don't think they should be leaders of our country. And it's quite frightening, really. They've been in power for 12 years. We've got inflation at a record level. We've got the cost of living crisis. I mean, people are absolutely petrified about what's going to happen in October with our bills. They're already going up. The prices of petrol, I mean, it is literally chaos. And I found it absolutely, I was shocked that Boris Johnson thought it was okay to have another booze up. But hey ho, we've come to expect that from this Prime Minister. But those that are leading the charge to go forward now, I mean, literally they've said, the tax hikes, they want a tax cut now, but they can tax cut without cutting any public services. If that's the case, then great, let's have them in the Labour Party, quite frankly, if they think they can do that. And what's your views on that? I'm looking forward to hearing what callers have to say. Hopefully you can all understand me, and a big shout out to all those Mancunians that are out there. And, I do think, look, I watched the highlights. I didn't watch the whole of the debate last night, to be honest. I was boiling myself as I was back in London, and it was a bit warm for me. But I just think it's astonishing how they can be in power for 12 years. They've, completely wrecked our public services. And they're now saying, oh, it's nothing to do with us, we can do a great job. And I don't know, do you believe them? Do you think any of them are up to the job? And people have asked me, to be honest, to say, a Labour Party, are we worried about any of them? And quite frankly, not at all. I'm hopefully doing PMQs this week, and I think the last 2 should do 3 questions each from me. That would be fun. I don't think Speaker will allow me to get away with that, but, testing them out and seeing if they're able to handle the heat is something that I think would be quite important. I certainly got a few questions for them after they've tore each other apart. So I think we'll go to one of the callers. I think we've got one now at the moment. So we will take Sam from Glasgow.
Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm all right, Sam. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on. First-time caller. I thought it was worth a call after watching the last 2 debates. I think, frankly, if that's the top 5 candidates that we've got in the country, I think we're all in for a bit of a turbulent couple of years.
Yeah, it was pretty scary, isn't it? And what do you think of them all, literally dishing out dolly mixtures all of a sudden after 12 years of telling us you can't have?
Oh, it's just the hypocrisy. It's just you've got cabinet ministers going on TV saying what a brilliant record the government have done over the last 12 years, and now you've got politicians discrediting all the work they've done. I mean, you've got one person, you've got Rishi saying what a fantastic job he's doing, and he's got plans to rebuild the economy after being the Chancellor of the Exchequer for the last 18 months, whatever it is, and inflation's at record high, the economy's in an awful state, and you've got him talking about the job he's going to do for the economy. And it's just all of the things that we've been hearing over the last year or so about how great the country's doing in terms of its growth, what we're doing in education. They're just all contradictory messages, and it's more who can get one up on each other rather than who's got the best vision for the country. I just think it's a bit of a disgrace, really. And I think, to be honest, I'm a big lady supporter, as you can probably tell, but I think it's just playing into our hands because people talk about there being a division in the Labour Party. I mean, between those 5 candidates, you can see what sort of division they've got in their own party. I think it's just a little bit embarrassing to watch.
It's a bit depressing, isn't it, when you see them kind of trying to shed the skin and say, look, we're all new again. And I'm pretty frightened of what damage can be done in a couple of years. We're not at a general election anytime soon, unfortunately, because obviously they want to cling on to power. But this idea they can reinvent themselves, and can you imagine what would be said if it was Labour in power now and we had inflation at a 40-year record high and the situation where literally people can't feed the families and petrol's going up and businesses are petrified of, being able... The amount of business owners that come to me now, I was out last night and, one of the business owners at a restaurant was saying, look, the energy bills, there's no help. They're literally petrified. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in my lifetime.
Oh, absolutely. I just don't understand how it's going to go. It doesn't sound like anyone's really got a clear vision. It's all about playing politics themselves, about who can get into power. But I don't think anyone's saying anything credible at all. I think the candidates who seem to be kind of leading the polls in terms of the favourites are the ones that aren't actually saying anything. You've got Kemi and Penny. I think they're kind of leading the polls amongst the Conservatives at the moment. It's because they're the only ones who haven't got a track record of saying ridiculous things on TV. But I think they're getting by in these debates by not really saying anything, not really having a clear vision. It's the ones that are coming out with kind of big statements that are the ones that are getting criticised. And I think, is that what we really want? Are we now selecting the best candidate based off who says the least ridiculous thing? I just think that's where it's got to. And I think that the last two leadership debates have really just shown that we've got absolutely nothing in that cabinet or backbench at the minute. And there's absolutely no one fit to lead. I think there needs to be a change. I think everything they've said just adheres to that, because all they've done for the past 2 weeks is discredit the work that's been done, acknowledge that there hasn't been enough growth in the country, and the last decade of government hasn't been good enough. And they're all on record saying that. So how they can then go on TV to say the Conservative Party is the right party to lead the country is heading in the right direction, it's all, well, which one is it? Is the country doing a bad job and we need new change, or is it doing a brilliant job?
Yeah, I mean...
And the Conservatives have been great. I don't understand what they're trying to achieve from it.
I mean, I'd be interested in other callers that are Conservative voters. I mean, and to say, what would they be saying if Labour is in power now? I mean, I think they'd be going right at us on the economic competence, because this government have shown themselves to be a shambles. And, it is quite frightening, really, what they've been trying to get away with it. I was going to say it's like one of those adverts, where you get something that looks really shiny and great, and then when it turns up, it's a lot worse than what you thought it was. It's like, is that it? But actually, the advert isn't even that good either. But Sam, thanks for your call today, and thanks for being so nice as my first caller ever on LBC. So thanks very much. And I'll just go to a next caller now. We've got Janice calling from Humberside. Hi, Janice.
Hi there, Angela. How are you? I'm
all right. I'm in an air-conditioned studio, so I'm not wilting.
You're very lucky. I got the blinds down on the conservatory and I'm sat there. So. I just wanted to, probably echoing a lot of what Sam said actually already, I have watched the debates, and to be honest, I was squirming with embarrassment for them. I cannot comprehend how people who want to run this country can stand there and be so clearly duplicitous, stabbing each other in the back for self-serving motives. And that's my view, that they are self-serving motives. It's all about being where they want to be, not because they think they can do anything for the country, because they haven't done up to now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not hearing anything of any credibility yet on what they're going to do to kind of deal with the issues that people are facing. It just seems to be like they're literally going at each other's throats, because all they need to do is play up to the Conservative Party members. But the rest of us that are not members of the Tory Party must be looking, I mean, I look in horror and think, well, what actually are you going to do about the issues that, I mean, people just say, get on with it. I want to, run the country, make it so I can live my life and look after my kids, and then, just leave us alone sort of thing. But we're not hearing anything about how they're going to run the country. I literally have not heard a thing apart from tax cuts, and that some of them are saying we could have tax cuts and keep the public sector at the level it's at, which is at a crisis level, by the way, because of the austerity for the past 12 years.
Yeah, and I totally agree. That some people, I mean, they are talking about some tax cuts, but they're not actually being definitive. And actually, to me, when they start talking about tax cuts, the tax cuts seem to be for those that have rather than those that don't, and the support there. I would be interested to know what your view that Labour would look at in terms of where they would cut taxes. But, just to say that, Rishi's fallback seems to be, I've been the Chancellor through this awful time, and furlough. most European countries had a furlough scheme. It's not the big thing. It's what anybody would have had to do in his position. Any government would have had to do that. And, you've got Liz Truss there thinking she's Margaret Thatcher. I was around in Margaret Thatcher's era paying a 15% mortgage on my mortgage as a young adult, and eventually lost my home because it wasn't sustainable. And then you've got Tebbit saying, get on your bike to ordinary people. I've been fortunate enough to be a higher paid taxpayer for most of my working life, and I would have every time paid even more to support those that need the support. Labour brought in all the Sure Start stuff and all the good stuff through Blair's era, which the Conservatives come in and just totally dismantle. And all I can see is the haves getting more, the have-nots getting less, and the gap in between. So how do we move forward so that we are not taxing business people to death, but we, at the same time, we are still able to support those that need the help?
I absolutely agree with you, Janice. And, one of the things I'd say that we're not very good at in the Labour movement is we don't talk about how we change people's lives for the better. We didn't have these problems around people in work going to food banks and everything else. It's crazy the situation we're in. And Sure Start was a great thing. But Labour Party, we tend to moan at each other and not talk about the great successes. And that's kind of what made me a Labour politician. And you've got this outrageous situation at the moment where, you've got landlords that own multiple properties and they're not paying £1 extra in tax on that income, and yet you've got people in the properties that are renting that can't afford the rent that are literally getting the national insurance contribution hike. It's just the wrong tax at the wrong time, and that we should be looking at different ways of supporting people. But thanks, Janice, for your call. I really appreciate that. And we're talking about the Tory leadership contest, and I want you to tell me whether you think any of them are up for the job. Hi, you're back with me, Angela Rayner. Hopefully you're getting in the mood. I certainly am. I think I'm starting to ease off a little bit. It's a bit nerve-wracking. I was saying before that, when I'm in the chamber and I'm talking to Tory MPs or debating them or argy-barging, however you want to put it, they're kind of my peers, so I feel like, right, it's my job to sort of take them down. But you are lovely callers and members of the public, so I always feel a little bit like, when you go around your grandma's and you've got to use your P's and Q's. If I was in the boozer with you, then I might be a little bit more combative, but I'm going to try and be as diplomatic as I can today, but hopefully get everyone's views in. I mean, it's hard to be diplomatic with the situation. Boris Johnson partying yesterday, quite frankly, he should be right out of number 10. Having nothing to do with government at all. I mean, he's proven himself to be a liar, and the amount of money that they busted on giving contracts in COVID to their mates was it is sleaze and scandal. It's just like the worst thing ever. And the thing is, what cheeses me off about stuff like that is everyone thinks all politicians are the same, and they think, oh, well, you're all at it, aren't you? And the truth is that most politicians aren't. And, I think our democracy, I'm an MP because I do believe we can make change, and we can make change better for people of this country. But at the moment, I think a lot of people are disillusioned in that. And then, we've been discussing the 5 candidates and whether or not they're up for the job, quite frankly. And I think we've all been looking at it in horror, thinking which one's the best of a bad bunch. And taking your calls on that as well. So I'll come to a new caller now. We've got Liam from Basildon in Essex. So he's got an accent, hopefully, as well, but a bit different to mine. How are you doing, Liam?
Hello, how are you? Good morning.
I'm good. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you. I just want to say before we start, this is my first time calling as well. But you mentioned your performance in the chamber, and I think you do a fantastic job, by the way, and I wish you were more than just a stand-in for Keir, so thank you for doing what you're doing. And I'm a huge fan of yours.
I love the chamber. I feel like a boxer in a boxing ring. The chamber's our place where you've got to give it a bit of banter and you've got to come back at him, haven't you? And I just enjoy it. I get nervous, but I do enjoy it because I think, the country needs somebody to say something, don't they? And that's how I do it. Say it how you see it.
And you do brilliantly, so thank you.
Cheers, Liam. So what do you think at the moment? I think you said the best of a bad bunch is Penny.
Yeah, I'm a Labour voter, I'm a Labour member, so I would not vote for any of them. But yeah, the best of the bad bunch to me is Penny, because she's the least attached to Boris. But what I will say about them all is what I cannot stand about this race is this anti-woke credentials they're trying to have here.
Yeah.
We are in 2022. If you look at all the polls, the majority of the British voters support trans rights,
Yeah.
They support race equality. They support same-sex marriage. When you're talking about these issues, when people can't even afford their bills, I think it's disgusting. There's more pertinent issues going on right now, and people don't want this anti-woke crusade that they're doing just for votes. It won't get them any vote. That's just what I think.
No, and on the estate I grew up on, we had a saying called live and let live. And most people generally are decent and, just think, there's genuine concerns that are out there, but scaremongering people, I think is just appalling, and throwing, groups under a bus, quite frankly, I think it shows that you're not fit for prime ministerial office. But I thought that about Boris Johnson. I mean, I took Boris Johnson on his comments because he's made racist, homophobic, misogynistic comments in the past that, quite frankly, if you were a bus driver, you'd get sacked for what he said. And I think that if you're prime minister of the country, you have a responsibility to, look after everybody and to act in a reasonable and measured way. And I don't think the way in which that they're having these debates is reasonable and measured. And I just think to myself, if that was my 15-year-old son and daughter that's going through a lot of grief, you know how it is as a teenager, and they're listening to that level of debate by people that they see as, people in positions of power, they see them as, people that must know what they're talking about, then how would you feel if they're conducting the debate in the way that they are? How would your son or daughter feel if that's the way it's debased? And I think it's appalling. I think it's terrible. And I think the debate is not a good place to have it on Twitter either. Doing it within the characters of Twitter is not the place to do it. So if there's any young people out there that are listening to me now, you're amazing. There's only one you ever on the planet, and don't let anyone ever tell you any differently. And Twitter is not the world, so please do not listen to haters on Twitter, because if I did, I wouldn't get up in the morning, quite honestly. So I think you're right, Liam. I think there's more. I mean, the situation with the cost of living, surely I've not heard anything that they're going to say they've criticised, the former Chancellor, they've criticised Boris Johnson for not dealing with the cost of living crisis, but I've not heard anything, I don't know if you have, what they're going to do about it.
No, and also they criticise Boris Johnson now, but they were the ones propping him up throughout that whole time.
Yeah,
and it makes me laugh because they say the left are the snowflakes, but they are the snowflakes in chief, in my opinion. They can't take any criticism. They can't run the country. And I just think it's appalling. I'm 26. I'm openly gay. Britain is very, very lucky to grow up in Britain as a gay man. And I just find it embarrassing that it's 2022. We're still talking about these issues. These people don't represent communities like me. They don't represent the working class. I come from a working class family. I find them all appalling.
Good for you, Liam. Good for you. And I agree with you, mate. I actually think, the debate that goes on in that bubble, actually, I agree with you. Our country is one of the best countries in the world. And people are, they're really down to earth. We look out for each other. In the place where I grew up, if you fell on the street, someone would run over to you and look after you. If you needed money, they'd give you the last pound in the pocket. And sometimes I think people don't get that about, that's part of what being British is. That's part of what we are. We look out for each other. We don't attack each other. We have concerns, we have debates, but at the end of the day, we don't conduct ourselves in the way that we've seen these 5 leadership candidates doing on there.
Yeah, and we also have great community spirit as well, and I feel like this is being gutted by these candidates. But I will, just to finish off, I will say that I do think because only 120,000 Tory members will get to vote on who is our Prime Minister, I don't think it's fair. I think the whole country should be able to decide that, especially when we're in a new leader.
Yeah, do you think we should have a general election, Liam?
Yeah, I do. I think it's just fair. I think it's fair for everyone.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your call today, Liam. It's an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we got through our first as a caller and presenter, okay, and that you'll call in a few more times. And I wish you all the best, mate. Thanks so much. And then we've got a next caller now. I'll go to Nick from Wandsworth. Nick, are you on the line?
Yeah, how you doing, Angela? You okay?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Congratulations on your first 20 minutes as an LBC presenter. Absolutely flawless.
Oh, I know. I was so nervous, I'm more nervous doing this than I was doing PMQs because, I don't care what the Tories think of me, but I care about what the public think of me and you good people. So hopefully we'll have an interesting few hours.
Yeah, some of the LBC audience can be a bit snipey, can't they? But anyway, listen, the reason why I called was regarding your question about the current Tory candidates. Well, I was visualising that those 5 guys and the women, standing up in the debates last night and the previous one. I was imagining 5 Labour front bench standing up in front of them and debating. And I think you lot would absolutely wipe the floor with them. I'm looking at Keir Starmer and yourself, Angela Rayner, David Lammy, Wes Streeting, Rachel Reeves, Lisa Nandy. If you put those 5 or 6 in front of them lot, I know which, taking the UK forward, I know which ones I'd vote for. And I'm an ex-Tory voter as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I was saying, Nick, I think that Boris Johnson's out the country this week for Prime Minister's questions, so I think it'll be me taking Prime Minister's questions. That's my understanding anyway. And that's been the case. I think the last 2 that whittled down to, I think Speaker should let me do 3 questions each for them and see how they fare, because I've got plenty that I want to say to them.
Shall I tell you who trusted my vote?
Yeah, go on, go.
My daughter, my 15-year-old daughter.
Oh, yeah, what did she say?
I'll tell you why. She's head of her debating team at school, and she's got girls and guys and kids who say they're gay and lesbian. That's fine. And she's had girls come up to her in her debating team and say, we don't want to go into politics anymore because of all the sex scandals the Tories have had.
Yeah.
And she's actually twisted their minds and said, listen, if you do that, you're letting them win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be honest, Nick, the most often asked question I get now, unfortunately, when I visit students and when I go to my schools, is how do I deal with the sexism? How do I deal with the attacks that I face, the abuse that I face? And you can see that their faces are a bit like, I don't think I could do what you do. And, that's why I hit back on some of it and I say, you know what, most people, and I've got to say this honestly, because I'm quite recognisable now, when I'm out on the street, people come up to me and they're like, Angie, you're doing a great job, keep going. I think online there's a lot to answer for with online and, and some of the stuff, and you're seeing those debates now, and that's why I think it's terrible. We had the caller before, Liam, about the situation with this so-called woke and trying to find, wedge issues, culture issues to attack each other on. I think the young people look at it and it completely turns them off politics. They don't want to have any involvement in it, and that's incredibly sad, I think. And I just say to them, politics can change your lives for the better, but if we leave it up to the people that think like that, then it won't change, but it can change if they get involved.
They're devoid of ideas as well. They took your Labour's idea on the energy tax, and also, how the hell can I be a high rate taxpayer now on 38k?
Yeah,
I had to be 50k before. Now they're taxing me, and with the national insurance rises.
Yeah,
the income tax. How the hell can 38k? I'm going to be a high tax rate payer, 40%.
Yeah, and those at the top earn their assets, financial assets, not got a penny more, mate. It's just like
I'm fed up with I'm fed up of being moralised by. Like, you've got Hancock on, I think he's on tomorrow or whenever the day. He broke up his family. I come from a broken family. So my dad had an affair, and it killed me. It killed all the kids. It killed us. But then also, he's getting his mates to get contracts and COVID contracts. He's got no experience.
Yeah, billions of pounds wasted. We're spending £1 million a week on storing dodgy PPE that can't be used. I mean, it is like literally, what was it Boris Johnson said? Spiffing money up against the wall. They have literally hemorrhaged money by giving it to contracts. And they said, it was COVID, it was a pandemic, you were arguing we had to get things quick. There'll be loads of people listening to this show who have got businesses that could have quite easily given the government these contracts and stepped up to the plate. They tried to get through, but of course they didn't have the WhatsApp of one of the ministers, so we're not put on the VIP fast lane, and we're not able to contribute to the efforts that we were trying to make, during a pandemic. So I get it was a pandemic. I understand people's cut them a bit of slack, but they literally took the hit and miss out of the country. They literally gave it to their mates, people that have got no experience whatsoever in that field, and just literally gave them billions of pounds. And I think that's utterly unforgivable. And I tell you what, if we were in power and we did that, we'd never hear the last of it.
Well, Angela, the other trade deal I keep harping about with Australia. Well, my mate owns mechanics, and he said, I can literally go to Australia, and a lot of it is about food standards. He goes, I can open a chicken farm. I can open a chicken farm in Australia, sell it back to the UK with no food standard quality checks. I can go into the new free ports. He goes, I'll put it into one of the new free ports they keep singing about. These free ports, if you just Google it, they're tax havens. It's the Wild West.
Exactly.
He it's like you can have a building in there, and you have to pay no national insurance on the people who work there. You won't have to pay any tax. So he goes, I can set up a chicken farm in Australia, sell my chickens in all my chickens to the UK. Don't have to pay anything, and I can sell it on afterwards as soon as it gets into the people onto the UK market. No food quality standards, and I don't have to pay any tax. How the hell is that great for the UK?
Well, it isn't, mate. It isn't, and the chickens are coming home to roost, as they say, with this government at the moment. But thanks so much for your call, Nick. I really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. You're listening to me, Angela Rayner, and things are hotting up, not just in terms of weather-wise, but in the Tory leadership candidates. And I'm asking the question: do you think any of them are up for the job? And I'm really interested to see if any of the Conservative voters want to defend them and tell me why you think they are up for the job, or if you think they've been doing a good job so far. It'd be really good to hear from you. I've heard that Rishi and Liz have decided that they don't want to do these leadership debates anymore, and they've both run off scared and decided what's the point in doing them, and have pulled out of the Sky News leadership debate. So that'd be interesting. Now they don't even want to talk to the public anymore. It's just get through the Conservative membership, by the sounds of it. That doesn't fill you with a lot of confidence for their ability to run the country, does it? If they don't want to, debate themselves. But I can quite understand it, quite frankly, because they have, you call it debate, but quite frankly, they've been throwing insults at each other and saying why they don't think their colleague should be the next Prime Minister. So I'd love to hear what your views on it. And we've now got Ian. I think Ian's on the line, and he's from Devon, and he's a Conservative Party member. Hi, Ian.
Well, what a pleasure to speak to you, Angela. And I cannot but compare you on your first foray, I guess, on LBC, to the previous lady who was on, the Anne-Marie Trevelyan, who seemed as though she was reading from some just random samples from a prearranged script. You're quite a contrast to her, and certainly on the Conservative leadership contest, I'm afraid no one really stands out. I would have loved to have seen David Davis run because of his absolute devotion to civil liberties, which is, I think probably you can relate to that as well. But
yeah, he's been quite forthright as well, hasn't he? I think he's often I don't agree with some on the opposite benches, but I think he says it how he sees it, kind of thing, and he's not held back, has he?
Well, absolutely, he hasn't, and I must say, you seem to have that characteristic as well. I mean, sometimes I'm sure you'll say things you've regretted, you sort of regret, but nevertheless, you don't seem to have a veil over you. You're out there, and that is so absolutely refreshing.
But I think that's why Boris Johnson did so well, because everyone knew what his character was like. It was well documented when he was Mayor of London and the Foreign Minister, Secretary of State. I think, when I listen to people who are not Labour supporters, they say, well, Boris Johnson, he's a character, what you see, they quite liked authentic people. They might not agree with what they say, but they like people who they think is not reading from the script, who's saying what they actually think. And I think that's why the public gave him as long as he did, but he broke that trust with the public now, and I think looking at the candidates we've got, they're kind of not learning the lessons of that. They're literally doing our job for us in the Labour Party by tearing each other apart.
Well, true, but I think with Boris Johnson, I think he deserves the appellation of being a genuine phony. I mean, he's completely out with it. I mean, from his dressing up in high vis at every opportunity to, I think this week he's been dressed up as a jet pilot, and it really is quite ridiculous. But obviously we have to go with who is on the ballot, and I think we need as clean a sweep as possible, and I think Kemi Badenoch is the only one of the five. I think would either not possibly have a chance of not making the country go broke or starting World War III.
I mean, I did laugh, Ian, when I saw Boris Johnson in that jet pilot outfit. I thought, he's no Tom Cruise, is he? He's it was cringe, wasn't it? I looked at it and thought, I was cringing.
More cringe is utterly undignified. I mean, it was quite disgusting. And again, it goes to show his absolute, genuine phoniness. I'm sorry.
Yeah. How do you think the candidates could do, Ian, to move on? Because, like I was saying, the Conservatives have been in power now for 12 years, and all of them to some degree, but some lesser, have pretty much propped up what's been happening and going on over, the last couple of years, where people have been horrified. I mean, Boris Johnson decided to have a party at Chequers this weekend when we've got this heat crisis and the cost of living. I think people are just getting really cheesed off, is the word that I would use to describe what's happening. And I don't know about you, but I'm not really getting a vision from any of these candidates yet that are speaking to the country.
I agree with you. There's no real standout. But again, as I say, I think we need a new broom, clean out all those who have been quite intimately involved with governance. And I think that only leaves Kemi Badenoch, although she does have, she is in the government, but she's just a sort of newcomer. But she is rather refreshing, and hey, she speaks her mind. And I think she would be probably appeal to a lot of the country. I really do. But I will say I think that the Conservative Party is in crisis. There's they have formidable opposition from your side of the bench. They really do.
Yeah. Ian, we've been out of power for such a long time now. We've kind of gone through our crisis moment in our movement, I feel, and we've had some difficult times. We've had to really look at ourselves in the mirror and say, look, the voters didn't want you, and I think we've got through that, and we've got some great people on our front bench and who are really coming up with ideas now on speaking to the country. And we were in that place where we were speaking to each other in the Labour Party for a while, I think, and the country were just like, you're not, you're fighting each other, you're not ready to govern. And I see the Conservatives very much in a similar place now to where we were, and we're hungry for government, and not just to govern, but to actually make the lives better for people and to get on with the job. I want a Sure Start Plus programme. I want us to, reward our public sector and get it up and running, and those teachers and the nurses and all these people that looked after us during the pandemic, and literally they're trying the best. Can you imagine what it's like being on the front line at the moment? I just think to myself, I'm thinking, if you're a social worker, you've got all that need out there and you've got nothing to be able to offer them because the public sector's been cut so much and the need out there is so great. You're just managing decline constantly and managing people's expectations. We feel it as MPs. If I get someone contact my office now and they're homeless, they've been made homeless, or they've got a backlog to get their passport and they're desperate for it. We're literally managing people's expectations now. We're not able to fix it because the system's in complete chaos.
Well, let me tell you, I'm sure 30 years ago, 40 years ago, what you just described would not happen. That homeless person would have found some form of shelter without difficulty. Really, I must say, I think we've gone downhill a long way. We may earn more money, but I'm looking at the housing, and it is a housing crisis, not because there's a shortage of houses, but because there's absolutely insane getting on the property ladder. It is, as far as I'm concerned, it is just an absolute con. Help to buy. I think all that did was raise the price of houses.
Boris Johnson said now that you can hand your mortgage over as part of your legacy. We used to hand houses over to our kids when we depart this planet, but now he's saying, put in your will, here's the mortgage, carry on.
No. Right now, and I do think this is going to be one of the issues that I think. The first party to really put forward a decent housing plan, and to me that would mean a wholesale demolition and rebuilding of new homes, timber-framed homes with insulation and heat pumps. And don't get me started on heat pumps, because I've been putting them in for 40 years in the United States, and they're very, very cheap, very, very effective, and everyone who's getting one over here is getting absolutely, completely and utterly ripped off.
Yeah.
Homes England needs to be turned over from top to bottom. It is run by the most utter, complete incompetence, I think, that could be found in these islands.
Ian, I think we're desperate for social housing that does have all of the latest, technology to bring down bills, to, the solar technology, to, deal with the climate crisis that we face, give jobs, skilled jobs. But I really do think this country needs more social housing. That is a big problem. And obviously we end up paying the rents for people that are in private rental accommodations that's not fit for purpose. I hear so many times families that they won't even report the landlord for houses that are uninhabitable because they're worried that if they do and they get turfed out, the kids won't go to the school that they're in. They won't know where they're going. They'll be sent somewhere else, and I think the situation at the moment in housing is absolutely at a critical point, and I do think we need more social housing.
It's a disgrace to a civilised country, and although I agree so much with Thatcher's foreign policies, when she sold off the council houses, that was absolutely a betrayal of the working people of this country.
Yeah.
It precipitated nothing but gross speculation in real estate, and we're suffering from it today.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, when I was a kid, council housing was it was a bit of a scourge. You didn't go around being, proud of being in a council house. But now, to get a council house is like winning the lottery. To get social housing these days is so hard that it is like literally winning the lottery to get a house like that. And I just think, how can we have got to this position now? I think it's, absolutely terrible. But Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, mate. Absolute pleasure.
Well, good luck, my girl, and hey, nice speaking to you too.
You take care. And
Okay,
I bet it's
bye-bye.
nice and warm in Devon.
No. Oh, don't get me started on the heat wave. I've worked in over 100 degrees for weeks on end, and you get used to it. No. I'm afraid we're making ourselves fools by going on about this heat. It's not that bad. Anyway, thank you for indulging me.
Thanks, Ian. As a ginger from Manchester, I can tell you it's burning up for me. I have to take refuge whenever I can. And apparently, I think one of the cinema companies have said that gingers can go in the cinema for free for air conditioning in the next couple of days. So us gingers are getting a perk, finally. That's what I say. So how are you all doing out there? Hopefully you're drinking plenty of water and you're keeping in the shade as much as possible. And if you're ginger, like I say, I think you can go to the cinema now and get a bit of air conditioning, which is a lifeline for us. I've got the wonderful services of LBC Studio, so I'm like a little polar bear, which is lovely for me. And we're discussing, do you think any of the Tory leadership candidates are up for the job? Whether you think they could be Prime Minister. Well, to be honest, I say this to people. I usually get asked a question that, do you think you could be Prime Minister of the country, Ange? And I often say to people, I used to think now that job's massive, and I used to think no one will accept me as Prime Minister. And I was always intimidated by it. But quite frankly, after Boris Johnson, he set the bar so low that I think just about anyone, Frank from a local boozer, would do a better job. And I think, most of us feel that way. But we don't want to set a bar low, do we? In Britain, we've always had a bar that's set quite high, and quite rightly so. We've had good international standards, and yet now we've got the Conservatives that are literally ripping up the laws that they negotiated with Europe. And we're a laughingstock abroad, as well as people looking in today, of our British values here in the UK and thinking, Boris Johnson, after everything that's happened, after he's been proven to be a liar, quite frankly, decided to have a boozy party at Chequers over the weekend when everyone's boiling in the heat and he hasn't got any answers to the challenges that we face. I think it's astonishing, really. I really think he's got a cheek to do that. But hey, you've got the 5 leadership candidates at the moment that are, trying to either distance themselves from him or trying to distance themselves from each other. And we've got Rishi and Liz who have said that they can't be bothered to turn up for the Sky debate that now apparently, so you're not even going to get to hear from them. They're literally going to concentrate on the Conservative voters who are going to choose the next Prime Minister of this country. Do you think that's fair? Do you think we should stand for that? And you're worried about the future? I'll go to Veronica. We've got Veronica on the line at the moment. Hi, Veronica.
Hi. No, it's great to hear you on the radio and very refreshing as well. Yeah, I mean, your answer, I mean, I'm actually quite, well, I don't want to over-egg it, but I'm actually scared about the next 2 years. And for me, we should, and this is why we need probably a written constitution. You know, it's not fair that 160,000 or 180,000 Tory party members now choose on XPM, especially at such a critical moment. So, and quite frankly, the 5 candidates, I mean, some of them are so far right and they've got the ERG, you know, supporting them, and their views are actually scary, especially at such a delicate time. I'm thinking the last 2.5 years were horrific with Johnson. 2 years is a long time in politics, and you can do a lot of damage to the country. So that's why I think a general election would come. And I'd say my opinion would be the best out of a bad bunch is probably Tom Tugendhat. I mean, he seems, you know, a decent. I mean, his voting record. I went actually to check it because I thought, you know, he's not all that glitters is gold. He's got his own 4 boys as well. So I checked his voting record. But nonetheless, he stood up to Johnson. He didn't accept a post in his cabinet. For that, he spoke out about Russia years ago. He called out issues with China, you know, on the Foreign Select Committee. He seems to be the most balanced out of the 5. And quite frankly, if we have to wait another 2 years for a general election, he probably would be the one who would do the least damage. That's my thinking. I don't know what you probably know him better than I do, but that's what I would see. Is the least damaging.
I mean, just for the listeners, the ERG group is like the right-wing grouping faction within the Conservative Parliament, you know, so they're parliamentarians. And I mean, out of the 5 candidates you've mentioned, Tom's probably the one that I've spoke to the most. So I don't want to maybe that'll harm his chances. I don't know, but I don't know if that ruins it for him or not. But he does seem quite constructive. But I don't get the impression that the Conservatives are looking at being constructive at the moment, and that's quite worrying.
The unfortunate is let's see what happens today, because the next vote is today. And then I just find it really surprising, well, not really, but that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are not going to do the debate tomorrow, which actually speaks volume. That's cowardice.
I mean, I think that pretty much rules you out. If you can't debate your colleagues, I mean, it's up to them to raise the standard as well. If they think the standard's bad and they think it's not great, then it's up to them to rise above it. You know, they're supposed to be leaders.
And they're the same party. And if they can't have that debate amongst themselves, how are they going to run the country? Or even more on the international stage, you know, you can't run off, you know, from the G7 or the G20, or you've got Putin across the, you know, you can't run away from those meetings.
You called me name, so I'm leaving now.
Yeah.
Was it? I can't remember. It was Gavin Williamson. Do you remember when he said, "Oh, shut up and go away"? Once when I think he was talking about the Russians or something. I was just like, this is something off a comedy sketch. God help anyone that's trying to do the comedy these days. You know, like we used to have spitting image and stuff when we were kids.
Angela, can I just say one last thing, though? I was an Angela Rayner skeptic back in the day, and I heard you on your interview with the James O'Brien, that interview, and you are completely, I have so much respect for you from where you've come from, what you've achieved, and you are a mentor and a role model for so many people who came from the similar background as yourself, and I think you're fantastic. So I just want to say
thanks, Veronica, and thanks for your call. And you know, I always try and be myself. The thing is, right, not everyone's going to agree with me all the time, and not even in the Labour Party does everyone agree with me, in my family, let alone outside in the general public. But I think you've just got to be yourself. You know, you be as reasonable and as passionate as you can be, and I am quite passionate, and that's because I genuinely know what it means to have the support, like this. state supported me. Like the taxpayers in the 90s, right, and in the 80s, you made me who I am today. I needed that help when I was younger, and you paid your taxes, you had good public services, I was able to have a school that looked after me, I had my free school meals that gave me my food for the day, because often I didn't go to school with the breakfast. And then, you know, I'd come home and I'd have a youth club that I could hang out in when I was younger, and I used to say, oh, they give you chocolate biscuits, you come round in a van and go and scoop us all up off the estate. And it was things like that, those like holiday clubs when we were kids. We used to go and hang out at the holiday club, and it was free, you know, so my mum, because my mum wouldn't have given me the money because she didn't have the money for us. So all those things were really important to me, and they didn't just materialise out of the sky. These things that help us are provided for by the community and voluntary sector, and the community and voluntary sector is funded through the state as well, and a lot of people don't understand that. So when you cut the state back, then you're cutting vital funds to the charities and to community organisations that help people in need, and you're cutting life chances for people. I didn't ask to be poor when I was a kid, and my parents wanted to give me everything. It's just that they didn't have the means to do that. But you literally, this is what socialism is to me, and the Tories keep shouting socialism at each other as if it's a slur word. For me, it's about community. You literally raised me as a child and made me who I am today. You might not agree with everything I say, but you've got to admit I'm a confident, you know, young, well, not so young anymore, my grandma, but I'm a confident, relatively young individual that's getting on in life, that pays the taxes, that looks after a family. And isn't that the story of Britain? Isn't that what we want to be? And I just feel like all those chances that I had as a kid now are being absolutely torn away from people. And not only are they being torn away from people, but you're literally told the reason you're not able to get on in life is because you haven't got a good enough job, and you haven't got a good enough job because you just haven't worked hard enough at looking for one. And I just think that's even more abhorrent, to be honest. Putting people in poverty, but then blaming them for the poverty, I think is just, you know, it's a shambles, and I don't agree with it. And I honestly do not see any of those 5 candidates at the moment saying anything that will inspire a working class kid from a council estate like me who wants to get on and do well. And there's many of them that are entrepreneurs now, by the way. The amount of working class kids that have done good that I hear in the boardroom that are decent individuals that get this is there's a lot of us out there, and I bet they're just as frustrated as I am that they're not helping business at the moment, British business, and they're not helping families at the moment. And I'm not hearing anything from those 5 candidates, and just wondering what you think. If you think I'm wrong, you know, let me know what your views are. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a bit depressed, and I think 2 more years of this is just hell. 7 years I've done in Parliament, and it just feels like the country's not really been able to go forward. We don't want to be on our knees anymore. We don't want to be feeling sorry for ourselves. We want to get up there, get out there, and be able to, you know, help each other and get on in life. And you know, I'm just going to go to Hassan now. We've got Hassan. What do you think, Hassan? You're a Tory member and you're supporting Rishi,
yes,
yeah?
Let me relieve you of your depression. Good to have you in LBC.
Thank you.
And I've enjoyed speaking to David Lammy. We're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. So I've been Tory since 1992, and I joined the Tory party in 1995. I stood in Parliament in 2005. I'm going through a reassessment again. So hopefully, if I do pass, we may be sitting on opposite sides on the benches. I'll be supporting Rishi Sunak, but if Kemi Badenoch does actually come through to the final, it will be a very, very tough decision. I think the leaders' debate has been good. It's been robust, as it should be. They should be challenged on their views. I don't think it's a circus, as Keir Starmer has put it. Now, what is interesting is the diversity and inclusion within the party, certainly within the cabinet, that was started by David Cameron, carried by Boris Johnson. When I joined the Tory party in 1995, I was told, look, you're an Asian, okay, you join a party that's full of white racists. You should join the Labour Party, that's a party for Asians, it's a party for blacks, etc. But we have come a long way from that. So what we're seeing now...
We have, but they haven't really dealt with the problem that, you know, we had a Conservative female MP who raised a concern that hasn't really been dealt with about, Islamophobia and the fact that she was a Muslim, and somebody said that was a problem. And by the way, I will accept, and I suspect there'll be lots of people listening to this saying, yeah, well, what about your own party? All political parties have problems. That's why we've, done our report, we've overhauled our complaints procedures and done a lot of work on that, because me and Keir get that the Labour Party is not squeaky clean and we've got issues and we've been dealing with them. But I never got anything about whether or not the Conservatives were going to deal with Islamophobia, which was clearly, not just at a grassroots level, but actually became an issue for a front bench member of Parliament in the Conservative Party.
Yeah, Wasi mentioned something similar. I'm a Muslim myself. I'm a Bangladeshi-born Muslim, but I've had a different experience in terms of Islam, because I've spoken to conference twice now, in 2001, 2006, which included Islam and terrorism, and people did congratulate me, and I was invited to speak further to a conservative women's group about Islam. So I suppose, because I'm not so high up in the Tory party, there may be a different experience, but my experience has been very, very positive. And it's down to us as Muslims to respond to ignorance or misunderstanding, if there is any. So there is an investigation going on at the moment. So I think the report will be coming out soon about Islamophobia. But I have a very positive mindset that if there are any what are known as Islamophobic or racist comments, I will deal with it head on confidently.
Well, Hassan, thanks very much. And, hopefully I'll see you on the green benches one day, opposite each other, and I get to meet you in person. But thanks so much for calling in today and for giving me your views. Hi, it's Angela Rayner, the Mancunian MP for Ashton-under-Lyne and the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, trying a hand at doing presenting for the day. Don't worry, you've not got me all the time. I'm just standing in for James O'Brien. It's not a second job. It's just me having a bit of fun, hopefully, with you and giving you my opinion and hopefully getting your opinion as well. It was quite nerve-wracking doing it. You can let me know how, be nice to me, but let me know how you think I'm doing. Give us some feedback. We're asking the question today on whether or not you think any of the contenders to be next Prime Minister, the Conservative MPs who are standing, the 5 that are left at the moment that are standing, and whether you think they are up for the job or not, and what you think should be happening next. And I think we've got James. James, be nice to me. Apparently you don't think any of us guys in Labour are trustworthy, but why would you say any of the 5 contenders are good for the job now?
Right, okay, Angela. Yeah, you're not doing too bad, Angela.
Thanks.
Okay? It's a little over Merthyr where the first Labour MP sat. Our first Labour MP is called Keir Hardie, the founder of the Labour Party, and your leader has the same name.
That's right.
I just like to say, look, I was a member of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Okay. I felt betrayed by the Labour Party.
Yeah, why, James? What did we do?
Why? Okay, I've always wanted to ask this because you are the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Angela. Why, when we voted to leave in Brexit, and this is the main reason, I can never forgive the Labour Party for this, why you went against what we voted for. The majority of us wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And from 2017 to 2019, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats and the SNP, when you took control of standing orders, you tried to stop it. Now, that, to me, you should have, if you would just let this go and said, you were going to stand by what the people of Britain had voted for, I could bring myself to vote for you.
Yeah, but James, can I be dead honest with you? Can I be really honest with you on this? Because my constituency was a Leave constituency as well, and I did feel the pain of a lot of people that was angry with us. But I spent years going through the legislation, the links that we have with Europe, and the deal that was being offered, right, was a really rubbish deal. Now, I get people said Brexit means Brexit, but it was so rubbish that it was going to harm our country, and we didn't even get into the debate around that because it was, you're just a Remainer. To be honest, I didn't have a particular strong view either way at the start of it, but Angela, felt
why didn't you let the vote start? At the end of the day, right, you went against what we voted for. You then said to the British public, with Miss Thornberry, you were going to go ahead with it and then campaign against it. Do you know how ludicrous that sounded to us Labour Party members?
But what we
just
said,
couldn't stomach it.
Sure. And what we said, and this is what I'm saying, the debate was binary. It was either you were for Brexit or you're a Remainer. And the point is that we said we respect the result of the referendum, and I think that was right. And I was on telly at the time saying that people who were saying we should have a second referendum was like, this is ridiculous. You can't keep having referendums because you don't like the answer. We had a clear answer from the public that said that they wanted to leave the European Union. It didn't say we want to harm the country, what type of deal we were going to get, etc. But there was no oxygen for us to have the debate about, well, what does leave actually mean? Does that mean leaving the single market? Okay, we leave the single market. What does that mean for our country? All these issues that genuinely I think that we should have been able to debate, we wasn't able to. Now, I say this as somebody who wasn't fussed either way, and that's genuine for me. I felt at the time we had to respect the result of the referendum, but that doesn't mean to say if you see something that's going to be really harmful for Britain, you see it, and we've got the information, and we were getting that information. You can't just say, oh, well, the voters have said do it. The voters said do it. Yes, I agree. We had to do it. But the way in which we did it, we never even had the debate about that. It was either you're a Remainer or you're a Brexiteer.
Okay. Angela, right. You are going to be the leader of the Labour Party eventually. You don't have to say anything, but we know that it'll be you that will be basically fighting the next general election. Now, if you want to have the Labour in your back pocket, then you've got to stand by and say what you mean is what you say. Like, absolutely. If we say we are out, look, but Angela, we voted out, not because it made us better, it's because we believed that we didn't want to be part of a European superstate. It's not about laws, it's what we wanted. And you were like that. No, children, you'll do as you're told.
No, I don't think it was, James.
The Labour Party realise the people run this country. Sure. You do as we ask you to do. Sure. And if you went ahead with that, Angela, I can vote for you.
Yeah. Now, do you know what, though, James? The thing is, though, James, can I just say this? Like, that is what a lot of the propaganda was at the time. That basically, if we asked a genuine question about what the implications of a particular aspect to leave, not whether we should leave or not, but there was concerns that were being raised by parliamentarians that it's their job, not just on the Labour side, but across the House, concerns were being raised about what type of Brexit we had. We were not given the opportunity to debate that because the language and the propaganda at the time was, if we ask that question, oh, you're a Remainer, you want to stop us having Brexit, you're not listening to us. I was listening to people. I was listening to people. Sure, but we were trying to get that. We've seen the situation we're in now. I mean, the situation, all these promises we were given, our NHS is on its knees. They've not dealt with the Northern Ireland protocol. It's in a mess. We're supposed to have had an oven-ready deal here, and literally Angela, people were sold
we've been in the middle of a pandemic, and at the end of the day, when the Labour Party decide to understand one thing, Northern Ireland is an integral part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We will not have it handed across to the European Union. Now, until the Labour Party understand this and actually back the people up, you have nothing with us, because the only people that we can basically look at is people like Kemi Badenoch, who are what we are, that we've dragged ourselves up, we've made ourselves try to be better. Kemi Badenoch, if she is the Conservative Party leader when this is done, I'm sorry, Angela, unless you're the Labour Party leader, you're going to get a trouncing.
Yeah, well, James, nobody's suggesting that we hand over Northern Ireland to the European Union. What we're trying to do is find a process in which that we can continue to trade with Europe in a way that doesn't disadvantage the UK. I think that's pretty simple, really. But what we've got at the moment is some big challenges on the way. And I do appreciate James, you know what, you express anger that I know is out there, and I totally accept that. But and it kind of proves my point in a way. When I try and have the debate, it's not about whether we leave or not. We've left, James. We've left. That happened. My point is that what we needed is a clear roadmap, a clear understanding of where the trade deals were going to come from, how we were going to have this frictionless trade and make sure that businesses can continue to be able to trade across Europe, and how we were going to deal with some of the challenges that actually decoupling in the way that we have we were going to face, and we were told we were going to get an oven-ready deal, and genuinely, there has not been that oven-ready deal. Businesses have been struggling. They haven't managed to fix the situation with the Northern Ireland Protocol. And people literally were sold a pup because, and I think genuinely at that time, we wasn't even allowed to have a debate about what it means and what type of Brexit, because it was, if you talked about Brexit in any way but get Brexit done, then you were a Ramona. And I think that sucked out the oxygen from us being able to have those conversations, because actually it does matter. And it wasn't that I just wanted to cheese off all my constituents. Believe me, I don't need the grief. You know, I want to do what's best for my constituents, and it's because of that I genuinely think that we had to have that debate. And I think we lost a lot of that debate, and we lost that ability because people felt that politicians just weren't listening to them, and I don't think that was the case, but I just think that was the context to it. But I do understand, James, that there is a lot of anger out there still on that basis. But, you know, we have left the European Union now, and we are moving forward, and, you know, it's about what we can put forward, you know, and these 5 candidates, none of them have given me an idea of what that means, and whether they're oven ready or not. At the moment, they don't seem oven ready. They seem like they're literally bursting out of the sack to fight with each other, and I think they've been quite personal. And the fact that we can't even listen to them on the debate now on TV because they've pulled out of it and cancelled the latest debate just tells you really that none of them are fit for government, in my view. None of them are fit to even be a cabinet minister, let alone the prime minister of this country. But I'm on LBC. I'm here to listen to your views as well. And James, thank you so much for phoning in. I think you speak for a lot of people still who feel angry, so I do think it's good that we're able to have that conversation. Hi everyone, it's me, Angela Rayner. I haven't ran out of the studio just yet. I think we're doing all right. We've had some good conversations already. The main conversation we're having this morning is, do we think any of the 5 that we've got currently Conservative MPs that are standing to be leader of the Conservative Party, which will make them de facto Prime Minister of this country, are they up for the job? And what do you think should be happening next? And we've got Rob from Highgate on. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Angela. Been very entertaining listening to your show this morning.
Thank you.
My question, actually, I just want to turn a question slightly towards your direction. I'm interested to know which is the Tory candidate that you would most fear standing against either at a general election or up in Parliament.
Well, you see, the thing is, Rob, I'm quite happy with any one of them, because the one thing that, and I kind of could see it, but I just always thought that Boris Johnson was a bit of a fraud. He had like this little like Teflon coating. He had this like little sheen that people sort of, you know, I don't know how, it's like a little magic where he was able to get through to the public and get through to places that I actually don't see any of the 5 candidates that are standing for the Conservative leadership having that at the moment. And the one thing is, what is good is that, you know, I hope that none of them will debase politics as much as Boris Johnson has, because, you know, Boris had so much going for him. He could have like literally, he got an 80-seat majority. The country was really behind him, I felt. You know, not that I agreed with it, but I felt the country was really behind him. And he just like squandered all of that goodwill. And I just, you know, the 5 that we've got now, I don't think have got that.
I agree with you, Angela.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Angela. But it's funny, you're deriding him and you're deriding his potential successor. But the reality is, the proof is in the pudding, what you just said. He wiped the floor with Labour.
Yeah,
he wiped the floor with Labour for a very good reason. Your party was a corrupted party led by racists. I mean, I've heard you criticise the Tories over Islamophobia. The Equalities Commission have, you know, after a thorough inquiry, have held you responsible essentially as being a racist party. We
did, Rob. We were told.
You were happy to sit alongside on the front bench, alongside an out-and-out racist, an anti-Semite.
Well,
I mean, your
that's
own
not what
colleagues
Rob,
to have police protection to go to your party conferences.
Rob, I you know, I get enough fair share of that, and have to have police quite a lot as well. And I think abuse across for politicians is quite universal. Actually, I'm pretty shocked by the way in which the standards of, you know, the debate in public has got to these days. I think that's wrong. But I don't think the Equalities and Human Rights Commission Commission said that, our leader was that. I think we had a problem in our party that we failed to deal with. And one of the first things that me and Keir did when we came in as the leader and deputy leader was deal with our complaints procedure and dealing with how we deal with complaints and issues that come up. And we had failed, and I'm holding my hands up to that. And I absolutely agree with you that we had to sort our house out in that respect. But, I remember people saying, put Jeremy Corbyn into power and he'd be a threat because of Russia and everything. I've literally, and I know leading journalists have been on this for a long time as well, we've literally been having a situation where as Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson was with a former KGB spy after being at a sensitive NATO meeting without any of his aides. He'd literally gone off grid, and we don't know why he was meeting with this individual. And to me, that is a security risk. That to me is dangerous for our country. So if we're going to have standards, then surely we've got to expect that from what was the Foreign Secretary and now the Prime Minister of this country, who has been denying it and then comes up to the Select Committee last week or the week before and says, oh yeah, I did meet with them, and has refused to say what that meeting was over and what was discussed in that meeting. I think that is dangerous, and I'm sorry, I think all of these concerns about, Labour was going to be a risk to the country. This Conservative government, led by Boris Johnson, have been a risk to the country. They have been reckless with our economy, and they've literally done everything that they accused the Labour Party of being. They said that we'd be chaos. I mean, we can't get more chaotic than what we've had at the moment. We've had sleaze, we've had scandal, we've had, money that's been given away to their mates, billions of pounds of taxpayers' money given away. And I'm sorry, I just cannot take it where people say, Labour would be this, that, the other. And yet we've had a Conservative government under Boris Johnson that I think has been one of the worst governments we've ever had. And I can respect Conservatives for their views, and I can respect that they have a different viewpoint to me on how they think we should run the country. But there's a big difference between having a difference of opinion on how to run the country and literally lying, cheating and sleazing your way through and then throwing stones at the other opposition, which is what they tried to do. They tried to say we were all the same. They even tried to say that, key workers were all getting drunk and, having parties. It wasn't. That's how they tried to downplay the fact that Boris Johnson and Number 10 were literally partying when people couldn't see their loved ones. I just think they've completely debased politics in the way that they've done things. And I think there's a lot of Conservatives that agree with me on that as well, because that's not what they stand for. So I do welcome your call, Rob, but I disagree with you on the fact that I think, the Labour Party has its problems, absolutely. And we've been dealing with those problems. I don't see the Conservatives dealing with the problems they've got, and I think they've got bigger problems than we've had, and they've proven that. And my fear now is that of the 5 candidates we've got now, none of them to me are saying how they're going to be different and how they're going to change the situation for people. And people are struggling at the moment, and they're in power. And if it was the Labour Party that was in power now, I can tell you they would be throwing everything at us, because they have failed our country, promised so much but delivered so little.
Program, because it's very difficult to get a word in edgeways. What I'd like to say is it's very easy for you outside of the system to critique and say you do this, that and the other for every person that phones in with any gripe or complaint. The reality and the harsh reality of the real world is that in order to do that, you've got to have the money to do it. And that money doesn't come out of thin air. So it's easy for you to say that there's a solution to every problem. You do this, you do that, you do the other, all of which requires obviously some form of tax raising. That has an impact. And I'm just saying, in grown-up politics, you don't just say to everyone who comes with a begging bowl where there's a problem, oh, you know what, I've got the answer. Because the reality is you haven't got the answer. That's why you've not been in government for 12 years.
Rob, what do you think about the candidates that are saying we can cut taxes and we can keep public services at the level they're at? What do you think?
Those are the candidates I wouldn't vote for. So those are the candidates. That's a good question. And that's why I genuinely am interested to know who you would fear most. Because I think the ones that you should fear most are the ones that I would vote for, which are the ones who are the grown-ups in the room who realise that it's not just about pandering to Tory grassroots who like to see tax cuts. The environment and the economy has to be able to withstand that. And it's clear that at the moment, and by the way, it's very easy to criticise Johnson over what he may or may not have done. But what you have to accept...
Well, it is because he's been so bad.
Hold on 1 second. But what you have to accept is the period within which he's held office has probably been the hardest for any post-war prime minister that we've ever had. He's had to deal with issues that you or your predecessors have never had to deal with. And so in that context, you've at least got to give him some either credit or slack, or at least acceptance that it wasn't an easy task. But putting that to one side, I just want to come back to the point you made on tax cuts. Clearly, the economy has to be able to withstand and has to be able to have enough resources within it to fund those tax cuts. And under the legacy of Corona and dealing with everything we've done, clearly, and with global issues, the issues that you talk about cost of living crisis. That's not a British problem. That's not a Conservative problem. That's a global problem.
But Rob, we sold off our gas reserves.
You can't just be party political about it.
Rob, you say being grown up about it. I'm incredibly grown up. Believe me, I'm a granny now, so I reckon I think I got my big boy pants on. And the point I'm making, in 2014, we sold our gas reserves. So we're at the complete mercy of the market. And we've got a situation where the French national-owned energy companies charge the French, I think it's about 5% on their base rates for energy. We pay 54%, so we're technically subsidising the French energy by paying more here because we don't have the resilience here. And we don't have the resilience here because of government policy and what the government have done. That's the frustration. That's the grown-up argument that we should be having, is that's what's left us completely open to the market. And we were told the market would be better for us.
I think the grown-up argument is wider than that. The grown-up argument is, why is the whole West dependent on a rogue nation providing its energy supplies? I think that's the wider issue here.
Well, our energy supplies, Rob, is we don't get as much of our energy from Russia, actually, but we could do more for renewables. We were supposed to be turbocharging our economy in that way to move towards being self-reliant. I think we should be self-reliant, and we could do that if we invested in renewables now, so that we don't have to rely on other states to provide us with our energy. And yet we haven't done that. We've had 12 years of Conservatives.
Which is actually why I agree with Kemi Badenoch's response, and actually Rish's response, which is you can't rush into this whole Green Manifesto. You actually have to cost it out. It has to be real world and not do it for the sake of doing it, but actually it's got to not negative or over negatively impact on the lives of the ordinary, working person.
Totally agree with you, Rob. But we've had 12 years of Tories. That's not what most people
say. And if you were to get into bed with, I don't know, whether it would be the Lib Dems or whoever, or even
I'm
the
not
Greens,
getting into bed with anyone, Rob. Don't start those conversations and rumours going. You know what it's like whenever I'm involved in these conversations.
Other party, all they say is net zero, net zero, net zero, and they bash the government for not doing enough on net zero. The reality is net zero comes at a massive cost. And people don't accept that. So they sign up to sound bites. But the reality is, when they've got to pay the price themselves, and it is a real price they'll have to pay, it's a different story. It's a bit like the whole taxation argument. Everyone wants taxes. Everyone wants social services. It doesn't come out of thin air.
No, it doesn't, Rob, but the cost of not... People. The economy, the green economy, by the Green New Deal and being able to deal with the net zero targets, these are important issues that would boost our economy, give people skilled jobs across the UK.
How do you know it will boost your economy? It will kill your economy. It will kill your economy when your competitors aren't doing the same.
It'll give people jobs. It'll give people jobs in skilled industry.
People will lose jobs.
People
will lose jobs because our industry will be uncompetitive. People will be paying through the roof. People will pay through the roof.
No, Rob, let me disagree with you politely. I think that we can create good jobs, skilled jobs in this country. We can become self-reliant on our energy needs by doing that. And if we don't deal with the net zero targets, and if we don't deal with the global crisis we face on the climate, I was listening at COP26, and the standout for me was the Prime Minister of Barbados, and she said that 2 degrees target is a death sentence for island nations. She literally said that they wouldn't exist if we don't do anything about it. And we're all going to boil over the next couple of days. Some people think that's just what happens. I'm a ginger. I feel like a boil at 28 degrees, but it is unusual for our country to face temperatures of over 40 degrees. But if you look internationally and globally, the situation with the energy, with the climate crisis we face is significant and dangerous and having a real deadly impact on many nations. And we can't avoid that. And I think we could be world leaders in leading the way for new technology, for being, global leaders to bring about how we can tackle this situation that we face at the moment. So that's me, Rob. That's what I think. But I absolutely appreciate your call today, and thanks very much for listening and for being nice and kind and respectful in the way that we have disagreements. I really appreciate that. Hello, listeners. I hope your day's going well so far. I'm not very good on a Monday mornings, but hopefully I'm doing okay now. We're halfway through my slot of guest presenting for James O'Brien while he's off at the moment. Hopefully you've been enjoying the banter and the conversation. And we're talking mainly at the moment about the leadership contenders, the Conservative MPs who are standing to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, but will make them our de facto Prime Minister, and what's people's views on that. We've kind of touched on a number of things as well. We've touched on climate change, the climate crisis. Obviously, we're all boiling today. And we've touched on Brexit and the situation there. And we've touched on quite a number of different topics. But I'm very interested to hear your views. And I think, is it Malachi? I think I've got in Belfast.
It is indeed. And you're doing a fantastic job, Angela.
Thank you.
And may I say, I can't believe that I'm actually talking to the next leader of the Labour Party, and I'm not sitting on a green bench, and I'm not standing in front of a dispatch box. It's just so super cool. My point is, I listened to the debate I'm obviously from Belfast. I was listening to the debate last night on television. One thing that interests me, which I cannot get my head around, the British public, Liz Truss sat on that debate last night and said she was so proud of the trade deals that she had done with New Zealand, with Australia, and what she was doing with the Northern Ireland Protocol, and what she was doing with Ukrainian refugees. My point is, I was watching the BBC, what do you call it, programme? The name escapes me. But one of the girls on that debate said that she was from the British agricultural department, and she said that the deals that Liz Truss did with New Zealand and Australia will decimate the English and the British farming community because they want to bring stuff over. She said it will cause massive unemployment. It'll also do harm to the fisheries.
Yeah.
What she did with the Northern Ireland Protocol runs a coach and horses through that, through the Good Friday Agreement. Yeah. And the deals she done with the Ukrainians, Britain have the worst record, I think, in Europe regarding Ukrainian refugees. And that woman stood and said she was proud of what she did. And everything else is an absolute disaster. And I can't understand why they would even contemplate putting her in charge of Britain. And, if you want me to, I've got my 30 seconds of fame. A lot of people don't realise that the part of Ireland where I come from, a lot of people are Tony Blair bashers. Tony Blair, and I'd say this to the British audience, saved thousands, and I'm telling you this from a nationalist living in Northern Ireland, thousands of lives on the streets of Northern Ireland and Britain because of the Good Friday Agreement and the time and effort that he gave to putting that together.
Yeah.
You talked about yourself growing up in Britain. Yeah. I grew up in Belfast, and this is the reason why there's problems here, and the British public don't get this. I'm from a council estate. I've had brothers. When I went to secondary school, I couldn't get a job in 5 of the biggest employers in Northern Ireland: shipyard, police, government. They wouldn't employ Catholics, so I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get a vote. Yeah. And we were brought up in relatively poor conditions. And it's very easy when you're brought up in that. And this regime here, which was run by the Unionist government, and they were the guys that made me feel like dirt. Yeah. And then the British Army were sent in here to protect that regime. And it's very easy to give a young lad, me being one of them, a note saying, listen, we want these guys out of our country and these people off our streets. And so let's fight them. And
but you see, Malachi, I think the British public do get that, and I think the people of Northern Ireland get that. They know their history, they know the challenges we face. What worries me is that you've got candidates to be the next Prime Minister who don't get that. that don't understand that actually, you know, our history informs our future, but doesn't have to, you know, make that future an impossible one where we can move forward. But, you know, what worries me is that the situation we have with the current leadership contenders is none of them really have that answer to how they're going to tackle those problems and genuinely work with the people of Northern Ireland and work within the European Union to resolve that issue. You know, it was pretty obvious it was going to be an issue. They just kind of said, well, we'll just get Brexit done.
Well, exactly. But the thing about it is, you know, if you take Brandon Lewis, there was a joke over here that had anyone seen Brandon Lewis, they were actually thinking of getting a documentary brought over here to see if anyone could find him, because no one had seen him since he was given the task of running Northern Ireland. And the guy comes on the TV, backs Boris Johnson to the hilt, and within 12 hours turns around and says, no, he's untrustworthy, he's not the guy for the job.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that are running the Tory party.
Yeah.
And all them candidates were all in his government. And they were all very, very nervous last night about putting their hands up when they were asked, you know, is anyone going to support Boris Johnson? It was all, well, what if? Like, my God of Almighty, the guy is an absolute disgrace. You know, a liar. Everybody's found him out. And now you've still got his supporters going, I don't know, wee Boris. You know, it's just embarrassing beyond belief that nobody just stood up and said, listen, the guy's an absolute balloon. This is what he's done, and this is what he's done to the country.
Do you think any of them have got it? Do you think any of these five could you know, well, I mean, I'm biased. I'd say I don't think any of them would do a good job. But I think Labour, we need a Labour government. But that's me. I would say that I'm deputy leader of the Labour Party. But what do you think? Do you think any of them could like not damage us further?
I don't think any of them will do a job that will keep Britain and international. Like even the Liz Truss thing, the Americans. You know, I'm big into American politics. Joe Biden has said you're not going to get a trade deal with America if you run coaching horses through that Good Friday Agreement. And again, Liz Truss doesn't seem to care about that. She's on about this. So, you know, the international stage that these guys represent Britain on, I think they're looking at Britain now as lemmings. And, you know, for your opinion of, do I think anyone can run Britain? No chance. Plus, they're all brown noses to Boris Johnson's government, not so much Boris Johnson. The Tory party, I think, are in complete disarray. And I think the Labour Party have a fantastic opportunity to move forward and win the next general election.
I mean, that is what I get challenged a lot when I'm out and about is, well, you lot need to step up and tell us what you're going to do and what you stand for. You know, I think you're right. There is an opportunity for us to, you know, get our house in order and to put something to the public that we believe is inspiring for the country, realistic, and also something that people can really get behind, because, you know, we've had a difficult couple of years. There's no question about that. And the situation our country finds itself in now, I think we're at a crossroads myself. I think we either invest in what I call Britain PLC, invest in our industries, invest in our young people, give them the skills for the future, and, you know, do what we need to do to set us going for the next 100 years. Because if we don't, we're just managing decline. I feel like we manage decline generation. You can't have a good pension. You can't own your own home. You can't have a job for life. And I just feel like, why are we in this circumstance where we're telling people that you can't have, rather than saying, actually, if we all work together and we believe in society and we look out for each other and we invest in our public services, you can reach for the stars and you can have as much as you want as part of that. And I think we've lost a bit of our mojo in that respect from politicians, and I've had enough of feeling down and out about these things. And I think the Labour Party, the challenge for us now is not only, I think we've got the right you know, I think we're in the right place mentally, because I think for a long time we wasn't kind of, we had this, I think everyone always saying to me, oh, you're always moaning. We had this like, don't take us to the pub because we're the miserable ones. So it was like, I think we're in a much better place now as a party to move forward. And the challenge for us now is to put that to the public at the next general election, that the public can believe in that, believe in our ability to govern, and that we've got the right answers to change the country for the better, and that we're out looking. You know, that's what I think needs to happen for us, Malachi. And absolutely appreciate your wonderful tone and accent from Belfast. I love it, and I love your contribution today. Thank you so much, mate.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers. OK, so we've got time for one more call. I think we've got Tony on the line. Hi, Tony.
Oh, hi, Angela. It's really good to speak to you. I hope you don't get too depressed because I'm looking for you to sort all this bloody mess out, to be quite honest with you. I've voted Labour all my life except for the last election.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of an old git, a 70-year-old plus old git.
You're young, Tony. We'll have you working till you're 80, mate.
No, I've packed up. I've really probably described myself as centre-left.
OK.
That's where I'm about. But I'm a bit pragmatic, and looking at the candidates, we are where we are, and we're going to be lumbered with one of these people for 2 years, whether we like it or not.
Tony, I thought you were making me feel better.
Yeah, so looking at these guys, there's only one person in my mind that's going to stand up to the mark, halfway up to the mark, and that's Rishi Sunak. And the reason for that is because we're going to be desperate for fiscal responsibility. But I've got to say, my real big disappointment in all of this is how Labour's contributed really to the position that the country's in. Just by being such a weak opposition, I'm pretty upset about it, to be quite honest.
What do you think we could have done better, Tony?
Well,
genuinely,
it's not for me to say what could be done better. You guys are in charge. You should step up to the mark and make it happen.
Yeah.
But, if I take one step back, I don't believe that the last election was won by the Tories. I think it was lost by Labour.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that it was lost by Labour is because I voted, as I said, all my life, 70-plus years for Labour.
Yeah.
And it's the first year I hadn't voted for Labour.
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't do that is because I could not accept Jeremy Corbyn's policies. And also, in Harlow, we've got an MP called Robert Hefflon, which you probably know. I won't tell you what I nickname him, but I write to him every week because I've been so disgusted with Boris Johnson. And he won't stand up to the mark now. So he's lost my respect. And I've told him so there, really. And I think just on one last thing, you're probably too young, Angela, to remember Lord Denning, the past master of the rolls.
I was born in 1980, Tony.
Oh, well, there you go. I got a few years on you.
Just a couple.
Lord Denning, look him up. He had a really good expression, and his expression would be what right-thinking people would do. And do you know what? We haven't got any right-thinking people in this country at the moment. So step up to the mark, Angela, and get right thinking and get a few of the people behind you right thinking as well.
Oh, thanks, Tony. And, I think you've hit, you have hit on an issue that we had, and I don't think we can shy away from that. That, you're absolutely right. Labour voters that have voted Labour for a very long time felt they couldn't vote for us at the last general election. And that was pretty clear. I mean, it was pretty clear by the so-called Red Wall and how that was breached, that we had a problem in our party. And when me and Keir took over as leader and deputy, we had to face that, and we had to face that with our members and within our party. Now, we can all have different opinions on who says what where, but the reality is that anyone who went out on the doors knew we had a problem and we needed to deal with it. And I think that we've been showing that we're making that progress. And I think you're right, we have to be not only a good opposition, which hopefully people feel like we're doing that, but we've got to be a government in waiting. We've got to be something that offers the British public something that is optimistic about the future, realistic about the future, and can really change people's lives for the better. And they've got to believe that the Labour Party has competence to do that. I think we're making progress, and I think that, like you say, I do agree with you. I do think that, there were Labour voters that felt they couldn't vote for us last time, and we had to listen to that, and we have to take action on that, because, they are the voters, and it must have been really difficult for some of them. I had people come up to me in the street and said, my dad was a miner, My mum and dad voted Labour all our lives, our family was, but I couldn't vote for you. And that's hard to hear when you've got people who literally want to vote for you, but you just literally made it impossible for them to do that. So, yeah, absolutely agree. There was more we needed to do. Thanks for your call, Tony. Well done. You've managed to get through 2 hours of me nearly already. Wow, impressive. I mean, sometimes even I can't deal with myself for 2 hours, so I think you all deserve a medal if you've been on that long, so thank you very much. We've been discussing the Conservative Party candidates who are standing to be the next leader of their party and therefore the next Prime Minister of this country, and are they up for the job, and what you think should happen next. And we've got Rebecca on the line. Hi Rebecca, how are you?
Hi, I'm okay. I just wanted to ask, so I'm a 19-year-old transgender woman from the southwest of England, and I mean, something that I've kind of noticed in this leadership debate is all of them just seem to be trying to one-up each other on who can attack trans people the most. It's like we're being used as some kind of political football. Penny Mordaunt going from saying trans women are women to saying I'd never support self-ID. And I mean, it feels like no matter what, over the next 2 years at least, I'm just going to lose more rights, from the EHRC report earlier this year to the government excluding trans people from a conversion therapy ban. And I mean, I know people who've been through conversion therapy and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified of even, checking Twitter or anything, because trans people are always trending with people hating us. And I don't really know. I mean, the question I really wanted to ask is a Labour government really going to be able to fix that? Because, they've still got transphobic MPs in the Labour Party, like Rosie Duffield or more recently Rachel Reeves. And I don't know if I can trust Labour or the Tories.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, Rebecca, one of the things that really frustrates me, and I said it earlier in the programme, because if you're a young person and you're listening to this debate, especially if you're on Twitter, which I don't recommend anybody debates it on Twitter, to be quite honest with you, I think it is really devastating and nasty and really harmful for people. Now, I get that there is genuine concerns out there around, women-only spaces, etc., etc. And I get that there's a huge amount of scaremongering that's going on as well. And I just think that we were the party of, equal marriage. We were the party of the Equalities Act. We got rid of Section 28 back when that was disastrous legislation against the LGBT community, and we've got to make a stand now. And I think using the trans debate at the moment and transgender women as some sort of political football to abuse and to debase, I think is absolutely appalling. And I don't think the vast majority of the general public are on that side either. I think, we do have to set out what the equalities legislation says. I think it's pretty clear. I think we can look at the Gender Recognition Act. We can look at self-identification that protects the rights of people that do want to transition, but also prevents the fears that I think is out there, fears that I don't think is justified. And I think if we're able to have that debate in a constructive way, actually we'll be able to come to the consensus. Transgender women's rights are women's rights, and it is our women's movement collectively that can have the solution to that and can work with each other to it. But if we debase it down to what I've heard on social media and some of the stuff that I've heard from the candidates that are standing to be the next Prime Minister, I do not think they're doing any justice to what we need to do in Britain to make it a more equal place for people and a tolerant place and a loving place and a nurturing place for people who want to get on in life. And I find it really frustrating. I find the whole toxicity of the debate really frustrating. And I'm sorry, Rebecca, that you have to hear all of that and consume all of that, and I completely understand why you would be petrified of going online and seeing some of that. But I hope you genuinely feel it, that is not the majority of what the British public feel, and that there is love out there for everybody, and there is a way of us being able to find a consensus on this issue. I absolutely believe it.
I don't even look like when I go outside, most people don't even notice I'm trans, and
yeah,
there's so much fear out there, and I have to fear because I'm scared of losing my rights, and I don't know. I'm just always scared, and it doesn't really feel like anyone ever speaks out for us.
And Rebecca, thank you so much for ringing in as well, because genuinely you ringing in and being so frank about how scared you are and how that makes you feel, I think is really important, because people do have to understand that these are people's lives. This affects how people feel about going about their day-to-day business. And, and I'm really sorry that you feel scared at the moment, and you should never feel scared by a government policy. This is what happened with the Section 28 legislation, in my view, and the government of that day and what they were doing. And it brings that back home to me, and we've got to do better, Rebecca. We've got to do better, and I'm so sorry that you're having to feel that way at the moment. It's not okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for your call, Rebecca. Thanks so much. And we've got Trevor on the line as well. So we've got Trevor from Southend. Trevor, I was going to try to do a Southend accent, but I thought I'm just gonna fail at it, mate. So I'll just say hello.
I'm an interloper. I only moved here a few years ago, so I can't claim to be true Southend, let alone from Southend City.
I'm not even going to try. I had a split second in my mind where I thought I'll go there, and then I thought best not, otherwise that'll get me in a right load of trouble. No one from the South End will ever speak to me ever again.
That's like me trying to do a Manchester accent. It just would not work.
How are you doing anyway, Trevor? You're a Tory member. What's your views? What's going on?
Andrew, my lump in my throat listening to Rebecca just now. Not all Tory members are. We feel, a lot of us, that trans people are people, and I just want to give Rebecca a big hug.
Thanks,
to
Trevor.
be honest, that was just shocking, and all the best to Rebecca. And
thank you. I really appreciate you saying that, Trevor. Thank you.
Not at all. Tory party leadership, Rishi gives me a little bit of a cause for concern. I don't doubt his integrity, particularly compared to the previous incumbent. But what does worry me a little bit about Rishi is that sort of, not only doesn't know the cost of everything, I don't think he knows the value of anything. And like a sort of MD or a chief executive officer, I get the impression he's reporting to shareholders, trying to maximise profits as they legally have to do, whereas the voters are the actual customers. And, as customers, we all phone up companies and we get told, sorry, we can't take your call right now, we're extremely busy. Well, you're not extremely busy, you just haven't employed enough people to damage your bottom line. And it just worries me that Rishi is of that mentality.
Yeah, I mean, where are the politicians? I mean, I think you need a balance, don't we, Trevor? Because we've had like the guy with a microphone and a stage that'll promise you the moon on a stick and then basically turn out to be everything but what you wanted. And then you get other people that, say, well, all these boring, politicians that are a bit stale and, we don't like the sound of them. They're a bit managerial. And it's like, well, can we have a bit of both?
I know. How do you find a real person? And that's where I think you do well to come across as a real person, someone that everyone can identify with. And going on to the Tory debates, I've found that with Kemi, I only listened to the first one. I had to miss the second one. I found Kemi believable. I found she thought about things, gave a reasoned response. It might not be something I agreed with, but I liked her response. And likewise with Tom Tugendhat as well. I felt he's got a broad range of experience. Yes, he could be tarnished with the white, pale, stale brush that is so easily painted of some Tories. However, I feel he does have a broad experience putting teams together, getting them to work together, people from different cultures, multi-talented guy, and I think he could sit down with a diverse cross-section of Tory party members, create a cabinet and take the country forward in the way that it needs to be taken forward over the next couple of years before the next election that I know you're itching for.
I'm itching. I'm absolutely itching. But Trevor, can I say, because this is we're coming up to my final hour now, and I'm going to change the subject soon, but can I say thank you, because you're a Conservative member and you said such wonderful things to Rebecca, and that's just like filled me with lots of love and admiration for that. I think think that was absolutely bang on. Total respect for you. And you've managed to end my couple of hours on this subject on a positive note. So thank you, mate. You put a smile on my face, and hopefully you've given Rebecca some reassurances as well. So thanks for calling in, Trevor. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
Likewise. Thanks ever so much, Angela. All the best for you too.
Yeah, take care, mate. And now, like I say, we're coming up to the last hour, and I was thinking that we could mix things up a little bit and discuss the situation we face at, public services. Have we got the resilience we need at the moment? Are we heading for a crisis? One of my colleagues in Parliament has got an article out today on civil resilience and local forums resilience forums, and how we can prepare for crises, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a heat wave. Do you think we have resilience in our public services, and do you think we reward them well enough? I'd love to hear your views in our final hour. Hello again, it's me, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and I'm standing in for James O'Brien. And we've got just under an hour now, and I'm going to change up the subject and talk about resilience in our public services. Do you think, as our public services are under strain, as we know, do you think that they have the resilience and the government have the plan to support? And how do you think they should be supporting our vital public services? I just want to put on record my absolute thanks to all those public servants that are looking after us, and I'm going to give a big shout out to the taxi drivers that are always ferrying me around as well, because they're absolute heroes, and I know they'll be listening to me. But public service workers, those that are looking after us, our teachers. I mean, we all know the value of a teacher now, don't we, after having to try and, educate our kids at home during the pandemic. I mean, we all know what a sterling job they do if we didn't know before. But our NHS workers, our care workers, all of those people that are keeping our public services going, they are doing a tremendous job. But do you think the government has given them enough resilience, given them the tools to be able to do their job and the guidance as we face these situations like the heat situation we face now over the next couple of days? I said Boris Johnson's been partying over the weekend instead of actually dealing with the problem that we face, but that's Boris Johnson for you. But do you think we have the resilience at a local level and at a national level to deal with the issues we face? And if you just want to ring up and say how amazing a public sector worker has been for you, then I'm happy to give them a big shout out in this last hour. So, if you've had a wonderful teacher, I always talk about, I had Mrs. Davis when I was young, and she was my English teacher, and I remember she helped me with my spelling once, and I thought, why is she spending time with me? She's a teacher, she's very important. And she gave me her time. And the one thing that I've always said is time is the most precious thing you can give someone. You never get it back. And, I find a lot of the people that come into our lives when we're in need and give us that little bit of time and that little bit of empathy can go a very long way to helping people. So what's your views? Under the last Labour government, my colleague who's in my team at the moment, Fleur Anderson, has done a piece today in the papers around resilience. The last Labour government set up local resilience forums, and that was dismantled by the current Conservatives. They didn't see the value of them. Do you see the value of them? Do you worry about where things are going at the moment? We have a call. We have Richard. And Richard, what do you think about this current situation?
Well, Angela, first of all, let me tell you, I'm a lifelong Labour voter. I'm never going to vote anything else for all sorts of reasons. So I'm not in favour of the Tory party. The problem is that public services are in a complete mess at the moment. I'm a criminal lawyer. I deal with the justice system the whole time. The barristers are on strike every day this week. This is the first 5 days they've been off.
Yeah.
It's in crisis. And it's because it's been cut for years by the Tory austerity government.
And barristers aren't the type to go on strike, are they? In fact, I don't remember the last time
the idea that they were being paid vast amounts of money. I'm not a barrister, I'm a solicitor, so I've got no skin in that particular game. But they're not the type of people to go on strike. People think they're all fat cats. They are not. Particularly the junior barristers are being paid complete rubbish pay. You wouldn't work for it. I wouldn't want to work for it. I'd rather sit at home, frankly. Anyway, put that to one side. It's not just the justice system. It's the prison service. It's the police. It's the health service. Ambulance. You've heard all the stuff on the news recently about people, maybe you'd be better off getting a neighbour to take you to hospital rather than wait for an ambulance. This is all because not enough money is being put into this system. The ambulance thing is particularly because ambulances are queuing outside hospitals because there aren't enough beds to take people in, so they're having to wait. And that is partly because social care was never solved, which Johnson said he was going to solve.
Exactly.
And so there's no money in the social care system. Yeah. Anyway, my point is this. I'm not expecting you to give me an immediate answer to this because I actually think it's a very complicated problem. But somehow we've got to find the money to put into public services. And that's going to be your problem if you become a government. It will not be easy. And what we need, actually, is a complete reset. As in 1945, we want Keir Starmer to be the Clement Attlee of 2024.
Yeah. I'm hearing you, Richard, and I was a home care worker that worked in the private sector, and I was what you call a casual worker then, and we now know them as 0-hour contracts, and then went to work for the local council as a care worker. And then we had austerity and there were cuts to the public services. And all of my colleagues, many of them were female, we'd all got foundation degrees under delivering the workforce structure, which was about raising standards in care. So these girls who, a lot like me, didn't finish their education, were suddenly getting foundation degrees and, being able to learn all these new skills and look after people with complex care needs in the community. They were all made redundant. It was like literally overnight, a lot of qualified care staff were made redundant because we cut back the public sector at the time. And now, when I look at the situation in social care and I look at the situation in hospitals and with mental health as well, my local police spend half their time sat in A&E looking after somebody with a mental health problem because they can't release them until they've been assessed. And the police are literally spending hours and hours sat in A&E because there isn't the public sector workers there to do that job because they've been cut. So we pay more. We literally pay more. So if we could just have the right care in the right place, it costs the country less in the long run. And it means that, public sector workers who are literally on the front line of this at the moment feel like they're able to actually do their job instead of feeling like they're just managing people. I think that's the heartbreaking thing, because this is like, if someone's got a mental health crisis, if someone's got a care need and it's not being met, if you're a professional looking after them, it must be the worst thing in the world to know that you just cannot give them what they need.
I agree about that. Do you mind if I make just one other point?
Sure.
It's actually really slightly back on the Tory candidates, because I think it's quite important. Everybody's coming out with this crap, in my view, forgive the word, about Kemi Badenoch being the person with clean hands. She's a new blah, blah, blah. She said next to nothing that I can see while she's been in these debates. I watched both of them all the way through. What I want everybody to know, Clean Kemi Badenoch voted in favour of the Johnson government's attempt to overturn the Owen Paterson disciplinary finding. She did, Liz Truss did, and so did Penny Mordaunt. The only two of those 5 candidates who didn't vote in favour of that attempt to be completely corrupt, frankly, are Tugendhat and Sunak. They both, I don't know if they abstained or if they paired up with Labour MPs, but they didn't vote.
Yeah.
They didn't vote against, but they didn't vote for. But those 3 should be asked about that the whole time. And also, these candidates should be asked, what are you going to do about public services? How are you going to pay for them if you're going to cut taxes?
Yeah, quite.
That's my line.
Thanks. And thanks for your call, Richard. Absolute pleasure, mate. And now we're going to go over to Graham. And Graham is a proper Mancunian like myself. So, Graham from Manchester, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I can do that. I'm just going to I'm never going to be able to set foot in Manchester again after saying it, or Manchester as we call it on a Friday night, but never mind. Are you all right, Graham?
It's a privilege to have a conversation with you.
Cheers.
You should be claiming a council tax rebate because I live within 3 miles of you. So it's yeah.
Are you an Alderman, Stopfordian,
yes, or Alderman? Yes.
Ah, Alderman, good old Oldham. Love it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things really. The guy who was on previously sort of said a lot of what I wanted to say, but it irritates me, and I'm being as polite as possible, when I see these Eton educated morons lecturing the working class people. Especially when we've had 13 years of defunding.
Yeah.
And then they have the nerve to say that the Mayor of London wants to defund the police.
Yeah.
They've spent 13 years defunding every public service.
Yeah, and you know what I don't get, Graham, as well, is they're saying, we can't give pay rises to the public sector because it'll fuel inflation. Well, we've got inflation now at a 40-year record high. We've had 12 years of public sector pay restraints where our public sector workers have had real-term pay cuts. We've got a crisis in finding staff to fill the vacancies in our public sector, and we're told that, no, sorry, you've worked hard through the pandemic, you've helped us out, you're not having a pay rise, and it's you that have caused inflation, and you're the risk to inflation. I mean, I just don't get how they can say that, and at the same time they've made it easier for bankers' bonuses to go up. They've not tackled the inequality in this country. They literally saying jam tomorrow to those key workers. We'll clap you on the street every week, but when it comes to feeding your family and giving you a decent wage, you're not having it.
I find that so patronising. I've spent 3 years going down to Christie's, and I've got nothing but praise for the staff there. Yeah. They don't want to be called heroes. They want proper pay.
Yeah.
They want to be working less than 12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it beggars belief that it takes Marcus Rashford to open the government's eyes to what it's like for children to live with no food in their stomachs. It's just it's unbelievable they can get away with it. And they start talking about, private education works. It didn't work for Boris. It didn't make him a decent person.
No.
If it was on fire, I'd use the toilet.
Yeah, and we're not a poor country, Graham. We're not a poor country. This country has been through so many different things. We had the Second World War. We created the welfare state. We built council housing. We had the NHS.
The Labour Party did.
Absolutely.
The Labour Party did all that.
Absolutely.
And this Tory party wants to dismantle the NHS. What it wants the NHS to do is to be seen to be failing so it can be privatised. That's going to be the cash cow for all these fantastic pension funds.
Yeah.
And it annoys me. It's going to be ripped apart by big business.
Yeah,
and
it frustrates me.
Big business that donates to the Tory party.
What worries me and what and what frustrates me, Graham, is that I was saying before, we're the generation that are told you can't have a good pension, you can't have a job for life, you can't expect to be able to go to your dentist or see your doctor, you can't have your operation within this period of time, and it's like under Labour actually, you could have social housing, we built them, you could have a doctor's appointment because we made sure that we had the doctors trained to be able to do it, you could get your operation within a certain period of time because we had the waiting list down when Labour was in power. You can have these things. You can have Sure Start centres. You can have kids being fed at school. Did you, Graham? Oh, you might have looked after me, mate. It's your fault, Graham.
I'm responsible. I worked in a Sure Start centre for a number of years, and of course, what did David Cameron do? That's the first thing he did when he came in power. He took the ring fence off Sure Start.
Yeah, I know.
And I saw thousands of brilliant people being thrown on the scrap heap. The Sure Start I worked at had everything you could possibly hope for a local community.
Yeah.
The community it was the hub of the community.
It was.
People, you had mums in the cafe breastfeeding the kids, talking to grannies, granddads, everybody mixed. But as soon as that Sure Start went, that went out to the window. And of course, sadly, it was next door to a football team that's worth billions and wasn't happy to contribute, and it just annoys me so much that the people at the top, they don't pay their taxes. I'm a pensioner. I pay tax on my pension, and I'm happy to pay that.
Yeah, exactly. We've got to end this cabinet of non-dom status. I mean, that's just unbelievable, really.
I'd like the Labour Party to consider what would happen if everybody in the country was put on PAYE. But I just can't understand how people can just employ themselves, don't pay themselves a salary, but pay themselves an allowance, and then at the end of the year pay 6% corporation tax.
Yeah, and on the other side of that as well, Graham, we've got a lot of people that are so-called self-employed, but they've got none of the, rights as a worker, and they've been pushed into this self-employment status, but really they get no holiday pay, they get, no sick pay or anything like that unless they apply for statutory sick pay, and they're really vulnerable because they've not got a contract of employment and they're not a permanent member of staff, which is why we've brought out a new deal for working people to sort some of that out, because people need security in work. How are you going to get a mortgage if you've got no regular income and no support? So I do think there's a lot that we need to fix, Graham, but thank you so much for your call and for what you did in your Sure Start Centre. I think it was one of the best things Labour government came up with while I was growing up, and it certainly, I felt the value of it, and there wasn't stigma with it either. As you say, it was at the hub of the community, so it's great to speak to a fellow Mancunian, and it's lovely to hear from you, Graham. I hope you have a lovely day in the sun. Hi everyone, the time is now 12:22. I didn't get to slow down time. I'm just enjoying myself so much that it'd be nice to spend the rest of the day with you, especially as I'm in this air-conditioned little box at the moment, which is fabulous. I wish my flat was as as cold as this. But how's your day going today? We're talking for the next just over half an hour we've got left now before I have to toddle off to Parliament and do my job. We're talking about resilience and public services, and whether the public services have the resilience to deal with the challenges that we face today, and just basically what massive heroes they are. And one of my big things at the moment, and I meet a lot of people in the community and voluntary sector and in our public services, in our core services, and one of the things that frustrates me, and as someone who used to be a care worker, I just think how difficult it must be being on the front line at the moment. And a lot of the time you're having to manage risk, manage crises, and manage people's expectations because those services aren't available and the support isn't available for them. And often it actually costs us more in the long run, because if people don't get the care in the right place at the right time, it festers, it doesn't go away, and it actually becomes an acute problem that costs us more money. Or if you don't have enough mental health workers, then you end up with police stuck in A&E departments, not being able to hand over cases, and therefore not able to do their job of policing on the street. So I'd love to hear your views on that. And we have Matt from Bournemouth at the moment. Matt, I was near you the other day. I was at the Toll Puddle Martyrs at the weekend, so I travelled up through Bournemouth yesterday. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, Toll Puddle Martyrs always draws quite a crowd. There's quite a lot there. I know that Jeremy Corbyn often goes, and Mick Lynch, I think, was there this time. So, yeah, there was quite a crowd around.
Matt, I had factor 80 on, I put factor 50 on and 30 on top of it. I was kind of hoping I got away with it because it was a bit hot.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, obviously, we're during this massive heat wave, aren't we? That's it's crazy down here. You get in the sun for 5 minutes and you're just looking for shade.
Yeah, exactly. I've got my freckles out in full force. I reckon if I get any more, I'll get my tan finally, because they'll join up. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. Otherwise, I'll just look like a giraffe.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I mean, luckily, I'm very much in the shade at the minute. But yeah, over the weekend, very red very quickly. So
your wife works at the hospital?
Yeah, so my wife works at the hospital. She's a physio, but the hospital itself has a minor injuries unit, and that minor injuries unit was closed over the weekend. That's the first time it had been closed, but it was due to COVID absence.
Okay.
But obviously, there's no resilience there. If a few people can be off for COVID, and now suddenly we've got nowhere for people who are suffering from heat stroke. We've got nowhere for them to go to. Our local, the next closest minor injuries unit is 10 miles away. Our local A&E is actually, I'm not in the centre of Bournemouth, I'm more rural. Our local A&E is actually 40 to 50 minutes away, and that's due to be closed in 2026.
Right.
there's no resilience there.
So you think these closures are having an impact on that? Because I was going to ask, do you think it's got better or worse, or what do you think's causing the problems? Is it because just the issues are becoming more acute at the moment, or actually do you think that services are creaking a little bit because of there isn't enough facilities and that things have been closed and taken away?
It's a mixture of everything. I mean, like I say, things like extreme heat wave. Of course, that's gonna make things creak. But I don't think people are actually staying in the NHS at the moment. It's just becoming so fractured and stressed that people are leaving. So we need more people working there. And like during COVID, my wife, she's a physiotherapist. She had to be redeployed to a frontline COVID ward because they just didn't have the staff to actually look after everyone. They had to redeploy people who aren't, who don't generally deal with end of life care to be doing that.
And that's quite a skill. I used to get, I actually quite like doing end of life care when I was a care worker, but it takes a certain skill to do that. And I agree that you've got to have the people in the positions that are able to do that job, and it does put pressure in other areas. And I think one of the things I've noticed, and obviously I know quite a lot of public sector workers still from my days there, is that it feels like you're running on a treadmill constantly, and there's never any time where you're able to catch up, so to speak. And that must put a lot of pressure on people.
Yeah, I mean, downtime is all but gone in the NHS. It seems like that's the first thing that the first thing to go. It seems like people think they're slacking if they're stopping to have a cup of tea, but really, it's just so much stress being increased. Week by week, new timetables are coming in, and especially during COVID, my wife was really, really upset about not only the things that she had to see, but how hard she was having to work with all the PPE on and everything. She was really afraid of passing that on to myself and our daughters.
Yeah. And where's their decompression from that? Where is the ability for people? I mean, our frontline workers, our key workers have been through so much. And have they had even the time to even stop and think about that and think about, am I okay? And have we as a country stopped to think about, are they okay? Are we doing right by them?
No, absolutely. I mean, funnily enough, this week she did receive sort of a well-being box from via the NHS, but really that's a cup of tea to have at home. It's a biscuit. It's a biscuit for when you're already in your free time.
Yeah.
When at home, you're just reading to. When they're at work, they need to just built in. It needs to be robust enough so that someone can go off for 5 minutes and say, "Sorry, guys, I just need 5 minutes." But it's not.
And it's not downtime, is it, Matt? It's not downtime. It's an important part of their work, and it's important for those workers to get it. Thanks so much for your call, and thanks to your wife as well for all that she's done for us. I think I speak on behalf of the nation when we say that we really do appreciate everything that our key workers and our frontline public sector workers have done for us. Thanks for your call today, Matt. You take care, mate. Thank you.
You too. Cheers, bye.
Okay, so what do you think? Have you got like, we've got half an hour left now. Have we got some like really, well, you can tell me what's wrong and what you think needs fixing as well, but have we got some really good stories about how the public sector has helped you and what you think that we should do to help? Is there enough resilience in there? Do you think it's downtime? Do you think that the wellbeing packages that we give to our frontline workers is enough? Do you think they're paid enough? Hi, it's Angela Rayner, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and you've got me for a little bit longer. I hope you're all having a good day and you're not too hot and you're taking all the precautions. Get Factor 50 on if you're out in the sunshine, and make sure you drink plenty of water today, I think is the message. And we're talking about public services, whether they're resilient enough, whether they have what they need to be able to provide a service to us, and what your views are on that. I think they're absolute heroes. I think half the time they end up having to do things that's not necessarily their job, that impacts on their ability to do their own job and put strain on the system. But what's your views? We have Chris on the line from Tower Hamlets. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Angela. Good to talk to you.
Pleasure.
Been a Labour Party member virtually all my adult life, but more significantly, I was a teacher for 41 years in London, and I ran a comprehensive school as head teacher in the East End of London for 20 years.
So you got a bit of experience in there then, Chris?
Just a little bit, Angela. And here's the thing, you're talking about resilience. There's two ways in which schools lack resilience. One, the overall, schools rely utterly on their teachers. A school is only ever as good as the quality of its teachers. If you can't pay teachers properly, you can't attract the best people into the profession. In particular, schools are having huge difficulty in attracting enough mathematicians, scientists, and that is bound to impact on the quality of their education. But there's a hidden incentive too. I said I was a head teacher for 20 years. The first 5 of them was under a Conservative government, and the funding was just about adequate to run the school, staff the curriculum.
Yeah.
But when Gordon Brown and Tony Blair ran the government, they started turning their serious. I said, education was his priority, and it was the same for Gordon Brown.
Yeah,
he started to focus on disadvantage. So the schools like mine got the kind of money they needed to provide the additional services without which teachers really couldn't do their jobs properly. For instance, if the children didn't actually attend school, they weren't going to be helped by good quality teachers if they were truanting, or if their parents found it impossible to get them to school or get them there in properly before they came. So we started to get money to provide schools with the ability to have family school liaison officers, who went out and helped them with the paperwork for claiming benefits and so on. You know what I mean, Angela?
This is my point I was making, Chris, about the resilience overall as public services as well, because it does have a knock-on effect. As you say, you could have the best teachers in the world in the classroom, but if the child coming into school, like me, is hungry and not thinking about learning, but thinking about what time am I going to get my dinner, or you've got problems at home, or the housing's inadequate, so they're not able to do the work outside of the classroom, or they're not attending school, then you could be the best teacher in the world, but you're not going to be able to do your job if those other issues are impacting on your ability to do your job, which we're finding a lot in mental health now and other services as well, where that knock-on effect is really starting to have an impact on the resilience of each individual public service. And the fragmentation means that I think it makes it even harder to deal with.
But this is what makes me so frustrated about the debate that's going on or so-called debate that's going on in the Tory party and in the country as a whole. We've had all this wonderful talk about levelling up, but when it came to it, after the worst pandemic of anybody's lifetime, the government appointed Sir Kevin Collins and said, "You've got one job, Kevin." And he is a serious expert in this. He ran the Education Foundation, which effectively, marshals all the empirical evidence about how children learn most effectively. They said to him, "Come back and tell us, what do we need to ensure that children who have suffered through the pandemic, don't have their life chances destroyed?" And he told them the answer. He told them what had to be done, and he told them what the bill was.
Yeah, and what happened next? We all know what happened next, Chris.
Yeah, they said you can have 10% of what you said you needed.
And then you said, forget it, I can't help you. Yeah.
And the knock-on effect of this, of course, is important, because one of the things that seriously frustrates me about the Labour Party, I have to say, and remember I said I've been a member all my life, Angela, is that nobody seems to want to boast about the fact that only once in our lifetimes did the attainment gap between the richest and the poorest students start closing.
Yeah.
And that was under the last Labour government. It was closing for once. It started widening again years before the pandemic. People will say, "Oh yeah, that was COVID." It wasn't COVID.
Yeah.
It was Tory austerity had created that gap to widen again long before COVID came along.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks for your work in that field, and a big shout out to the teachers and also the teaching support staff as well, who will be looking after my children hopefully today as well while I'm on this show. So thank you to everyone who works in education, and thanks, Chris, for your contributions today. I'm going to go quickly to Mark now. So we've got Mark, who's a social worker. Thank you, Mark, for everything that you're doing, and you work with mental health, and you're a mental health professional.
I've been social worker for 28 years this month, Angela. Yeah.
Oh wow, well done you. I bet you've seen it evolve over the time. What's your views, mate?
The first thing I wanted to say, I just want to give you a bit of heart. So I have 3 children. My daughter is a ginger like you.
Hey.
And in 2010, she stood as the leader of the ginger party at her primary school.
Brilliant, I love it.
And she won.
Excellent, we had a landslide victory.
It was a landslide victory, yeah. They had to go to the town hall in cowboy hats and have ice creams.
Brilliant, excellent, I love it.
So the reason I rang, the main reason I rang, so we do Mental Health Act assessments, Angela, so that's where someone that don't like this word is section. The word should be detained. It's an ugly word, section. So we do assessments. So recently, our record at the moment, I think, is someone was assessed under the Mental Health Act, not in a hospital where I work, and they had to wait 14 days, not 14 minutes, not 14 hours, 14 days in A&E.
Oh,
It makes me really emotional, sorry.
14 days.
I just get really emotional about it.
Yeah, because if you're at crisis to go to A&E,
it's a big decision to say to somebody, you are so unwell, you need to be in hospital against your will, I need to detain you.
Yeah.
And you're both, as I said to your researcher, both hands are tied behind your back.
Yeah.
So what I would ask the Labour Party, and I think we all know the pressures, and that's why ambulances back up, because we can't move people. So what I'd ask the Labour Party to do, if you get in government, when you get in government, is to ring-fence the funding for mental health.
Yeah.
So that when it comes down to the CCDs or whatever the government want to call it, PCT, primary care trust, whatever they keep changing the name, they just change it again. When that money comes down to the local, that they cannot spend it on other priorities. They can't spend it on other funding gaps. They must spend it on mental health because the money gets diluted. And sometimes, like in CAMS, there was one local authority where they only had 50, they ended up with 50% for mental health that they should have had, and that other 50% went to other health priorities, Angela. That's kind of where it's going. So you had these lovely announcements from central government. We've got all this money for mental health. We don't see it.
Yeah, that's so painful.
The other weekend, we had 46 people. That's just in our local area in South London. 46 people waiting for a bed.
And these were all crisis. These were all people.
No. If you're waiting for a bed, these are people that are coming under the Mental Health Act.
Yeah.
Mainly coming in under the Mental Health Act. Yeah. So that's what I would ask the Labour Party to do. Please ring fence that funding to ensure that 100% of the funding that the Health Minister or the Health Secretary of State is announcing comes to us.
I'm hearing you, Mark.
Help people.
I'm hearing you, mate. And honestly, the work that you do is tremendous. I mean, I make no bones about the fact that I've looked after my mum since I was as young as I can remember, because my mum's bipolar and she's had episodes where she's had to go into psychiatric unit and get support. And she won't mind me saying it, by the way, just in case anyone says you're out in your mother. She's all right. To be honest, my mum was probably listening, so hi, mum. And she knows I'm incredibly proud of her, because getting out of bed in the morning can be the biggest task that she has to face that day, and she faces it and she tries her best. And I think that in our country we really do need to start to understand how mental health can affect anybody at any particular time, and how we can support people, not just when they need that support, but can we stop breaking people, especially young people, and start building them up and giving them the support at the earliest point, so we don't have to have people 14 days in A&E. I don't know. This is the point I was making before, Mark, about how difficult it is for you on the front line. How do you do your job when you've got to wait that long? It makes it difficult for you.
But to be fair, Angela, it's not too bad for me in one sense, is that I go in and do the assessment and then I have to wait for the bed. It's the poor nurses and doctors in A&E who have to manage these very distressed people. I mean, I go to A&E for maybe half an hour max while I'm doing an assessment, and it's a very difficult, challenging environment to be in. How somebody who's mentally distressed hopes for 2 days, 3 days, 14 days.
Yeah.
They're living in A&E, Angela.
Yeah.
How do you even... If I said to you now, go and live in A&E for 14 days, you'd lose the plot.
I'd lose the plot after 13 hours.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just incredible what we're asking people to do.
I agree.
We really need to get the funding ring-fenced.
I've heard you, Matt. I've heard you loud and clear. Hopefully the other side have as well, if they're listening and tuning into LBC at the moment. But I think it's, absolutely right. And I've heard you, and I think we need to make sure that happens. And I will do my best for you, Mark, and keep doing such a sterling, good job that you're doing at the moment. Thank you for your call. Hello, and we're coming up to nearly 1 o'clock. I've nearly done all my time with you for today, but it has been great to speak to you all, and I think I've just about survived so far, but we're not at the end yet. We're talking about public services, and do they have the resilience and what they need to deliver their services at the moment? I think they're heroes. I think we all agree with that, but do they have what they need to deliver a good service to people and to do their job effectively? And I've got Stuart on the line. Stuart's a nurse. Hi, Stuart.
Hello there.
How are you doing?
I'm frustrated.
I bet. Go on, tell me.
I'm a mental health nurse. I'm currently serving in the military. I've got experience working in the NHS. Left the NHS due to opportunities in the military, but got frustrated with the lack of pay, basically. With the price of diesel going up, and the national insurance going up, it's got to the point where I thought, this work is not worth the squeeze. The fruit isn't worth the squeeze, so I'm going to leave the military and look elsewhere, explore options in the NHS. Naturally went on NHS jobs, had a look, inquired about a few jobs, and the salaries are just so low that I don't know why anybody would ever take these jobs. And they're not, because these vacancies have been open for over a year.
Yeah.
So I've inquired about a couple of jobs and sort of thought, well, do you know what? If I can work in my local town, that salary of up to £40,000 might work. But when you explore the options, it's like, hang on, you want me to work 5 days a week? You're not going to pay parking or travel expenses, anything like that. And I know the job's going to be quite stressful and difficult. And you're thinking, well, actually, there's a nursing agency who the same NHS trust will give that job to, who will then pay me literally twice the pay to do the exact same job.
Exactly, Stuart, and we pay for that, so we get the inconsistency. This is why we've got to pay our public service workers the right amount of money. You know, you can't shy away from this because we're paying for it anyway.
This NHS agenda for change means that the pay scales are non-negotiable. So a band 6 nurse, for example, might earn up to £40,000. Okay, now that will be the same if you are working in the northeast where it's really cheap, or in the southwest where it's really. So if you're in a town where the average house price is £400,000, for example, who is willing to work for such a little amount of money? You're going to be going to food banks and things. You can't afford to live comfortably.
No.
And it's getting to the point where, why would anybody do that? And they've scrapped bursary now.
Well, they can't, Stuart. They can't do it, can they? And as you say, the bursaries as well, to get onto the, the ladder of getting into there. That's become near impossible for people as well. So, look, I just think, the central point you made, and I think you've made it very, very well, is that if we're not willing to pay the nurses and we're not willing to pay our public service workers a decent day's pay, you will pay for it, but you will pay by having to call in agency workers who then, therefore, you're not getting the consistency. Those agency workers, by the way, are great. You could be one yourself, but yourself, it's not as good as having somebody who consistently works in the same place, who knows the people around them, who are able to deliver that service. So pay them more first rather than paying an agency a big premium on top is what my view is, Stuart.
Absolutely. And do you know what? There's another issue here, and it's the NMC, so the Nursing and Midwifery Council. The majority of nurses, newly registered nurses in the UK last year were open. That is probably because bursaries, it's too expensive to, if you're a young adult now, you're not going to go into nursing because you're going to accumulate debt to go into a low-paid profession. So British people aren't going into those jobs. And they're fast-tracking foreign immigrants into these positions. And regardless of what people think of immigration or Brexit, that is driving down UK salaries. If people are willing to accept that low salary, the government have no incentive to increase the salary because they'll just increase immigration.
Yeah, I mean...
And I know everybody's bored of talking about Brexit, but I think that's why Labour is so split at the moment, because there's a lot of workers who actually see immigration as a huge problem that's causing inflation and driving down wages, and the other half of Labour who are really supportive and inclusive of that.
Yeah.
Now, unless Labour gets their acts together and unites those voters, we're going to see more Tory leadership, and who wants that?
Yeah, and which is why, I mean, sorry to plug myself again, but the New Deal for Working People that I worked on with, I'll plug my colleague Andy MacDonald, we set out working with the trade unions and working with employers, a New Deal for Working People, which is a green paper, which is basically a piece of legislation that within the first 100 days of a Labour government will bring in minimum standards so that we can't have this undercutting. So for me, it is about making sure that people have a standard that we say, okay, if you're working in this country, you can expect this as a minimum. Because we saw this with the P&O. You know, the government said to P&O workers, it's terrible what the employers have done to those P&O workers. You know, they fired them, brought in agency workers from overseas. The danger that was involved. I mean, there was a ship that literally couldn't leave the dock because of safety concerns, and there was real problems that happened as a result of that as well. And I took issue with the government only last week on them wanting to bring in agency workers to break strike action, because at the moment in this country a lot of people are going to work without any security for them and their family, and I think that's wrong, and I think we've got to protect people from that. So I agree with you, Stuart.